Okay, we're now ready.
We're done. Thank you so much. All right, good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 25th at 6:04 PM. So I'll officially call this board meeting to order. We'll start our roll call.
Dave Larson, and Director of District 5.
Terrence Proctor, Director of District 4.
Dr. Constable Joseph, Superintendent.
Freddie Hoover, Daydem, Director of District 1.
Chad Gibson, District 3.
And Kate Keller, District 2.
Alex Brewster, Senior Student Representative.
Brianna Dela Cruz, sophomore student representative.
Aiden Halleck, Junior Student Representative.
Thank you all. Welcome to our guests joining both in person and online. So glad that you're here with us this evening. We'll start today with our land and labor recognition.
Sure, our land acknowledgement. We in the Tukwila School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is a traditional land of the first people of Seattle. The Duwamish and the Muckleshoot people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and the Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and we strive to work alongside the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial. Our land labor acknowledgement is, we further acknowledge that the burden of the environmental exploitation and systematic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. We remember that Black and brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. We also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. As a school district leadership, we pledge to recognize and work against systems that have historically and currently enforced and create inequities among the people we serve.
For those who would like, I invite you to stand for the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is our Tukwila School Board Values and Group Agreements. We're doing all agreements
I
today.
know, and I just made my glasses. All right, so Tukwila School Board Values and Group Agreements. First one is transparency. Be honest, communicate with your point of view and why explain what you're doing is understandable or more simple terms. Ask clarifying questions and break down what's being said. Courage. Speak frankly about the uncomfortable things. Listen deeply. Listen to understand, not to respond. Minimize multitasking. Embrace the brainstorm. Lean into the tough conversations, own mistakes, and address unintentional impact. Righteousness. Relentless pursuit for exploring the right thing to do, to be or become. Challenge versus taking the easiest or cost-effective path. Curiosity. Ask questions for understanding, suspend judgment. Respect. Center humanity. Find out what respect means to each other. Active listening, seeing the whole person, recognize what each of us might be bringing in that day and ask what the impacts, what would be the impact.
In addition to these group agreements, we have kind of a mechanism that we've identified to kind of like pause with these. I just want to thank the board for leaning in to that. I know it can be hard and uncomfortable sometimes to call people in, right? And call behaviors out that don't align. But we've used it, and it's been appreciated. I've been appreciative of that. So anyway, just wanted to share some gratitude for that. All right, so we'll move to the approval of tonight's agenda. Get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is approved. Next, our opportunity for public comment. We have one written public comment. And then we have some as well. Thank you. Let's start with the written public comment and then we'll come to the in-person. Okay, so this is dated, the 13th of March. Hello, school board. I appreciate all you do for the Tukwila community. You're a very good school board. I watch your meetings. Thank you very much. I want to say I'm still very worried about the problems with the superintendent communication. This week, the kids had early dismissal and the time changed. I understand the time changed to early dismissal, but then the superintendent told us the wrong time. On Tuesday, I got the message and I changed my kid's schedule because the message said the wrong time for elementary, wrong time for middle, and wrong time for high school. I don't know why it changed, but I changed their schedule. Then on Wednesday before early dismissal, I got another message saying it changed back to the time I thought before. We are very confused. I spent more money for kids' care, and this is a big problem for my family. Please fix the communication from the superintendent so it is clear and we understand. It's very hard with all of the changes that don't make sense to my family. Thank you, school board. That's from Jose Ortega. And I think, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, for your comments. Next, Joe.
Hey y'all, Joe Camacho, I'm a teacher at Foster High School. I'm here tonight to urge you to stand in support of our transgender students and reject any proposals that would ban their participation in school sports. As an educator, I see firsthand how athletics provide students with essential opportunities for personal growth, teamwork, and belonging. No student should be denied these benefits simply because of the way they are. Since 2007, WIAA's policies have allowed transgender students to participate in sports consistent with their gender identity, which fosters an environment of inclusion and fairness. These policies also align with our state's anti-discrimination laws and reflect our values as a school district committed to supporting all students. This April, WIAA's board will vote to change these rules, which would result in limiting participations in girls' sports to students assigned female at birth. These changes would not only harm transgender students, but also set a dangerous precedent of exclusion in our schools. Singling out our transgender students for separate divisions or banning them from participation entirely is not about fairness, it's about discrimination. We know that transgender youth already face higher risks of bullying, depression, and suicidal ideation. And denying them access to sports will only make these challenges worse. So as educators, our job is to uplift and protect all of our students, not to support policies that push some of them into the margins. So I urge our district to be vocal and oppose any efforts to ban transgender students from participating in school sports. I think it's time that we need to send a clear message that all students in our district are valued, supported, and they're welcome to play. I sent the notes to Ms. Kaur and included some links from a KUOW article, as well as the language that the amendments that WIAA is proposing. Today, I had the opportunity to speak with our athletic director. He said that he's been in contact with some of the board members, with the superintendent about the district's response. I also want to give a shout out to my nephew who I called before I said, hey, what do I gotta add? Yeah, I think it's really important. It sounds like some of the work is happening behind the scenes, but what does it look like to uplift that work to the front line so that our students know that we're here and we're gonna support them. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, so I want to address that. And I actually have a statement of my own that I'm going to read during my director's report, but I do want to acknowledge some of the work that's been happening behind the scenes. So Dr. Pedroza and I first met as soon as I heard about those amendments coming. And of course, we have been talking about the attacks on trans students since pre-election as well, right, knowing that was coming. So some of the steps that we've taken, and I'm actually really proud of our advocacy work as a district. So we drafted a letter. So there was actually a letter in support of the amendments that was signed by 7 superintendents across the state. We have now sent out a different narrative. So a letter is now circulating to get a few additional superintendents. I think we've got 6.
Got 7 now.
We got 7, so we at least met theirs. We're hoping to get a few more. That really is stating our commitment as not just our district, but that group of superintendents, and really speaking some truth to the false narrative that was sent in that letter before. So we're definitely keeping a really close eye on it and doing what we can. Also, you know, I'm grateful, continuously grateful that we live in the state that we do, where we have a superintendent of public instruction who is very vocal as well. Really reinforcing and reiterating that those amendments, should they be passed, are not legal. So anyway, just wanted to share a little bit of that, and I think we can definitely work on sending something out within the district to make sure that that's.
We can post the letter or something.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, any additional public comments online? No, okay, all right, so we'll now move to our student representative reports. In any order you would like.
Yeah, I'll go first with my report. So basically, I'm just gonna give like an overview of the student advisory meeting that we had today, the superintendent student advisory meeting. So, yeah, Aiden, Rihanna, and I all helped to facilitate and like plan the meeting this month that happened last Wednesday. And I'm just gonna use my time to share some of the insights and recommendations that happened or that we like discussed during the meeting. So, yeah, I came up with 5 critical, from the notes, 5 critical areas for district's improvement. And the first one was scholar-teacher relationships, because a lot of the students emphasized the need for professionalism, patience, and respectful communication, and advocating against harsh disciplinary practices like yelling, for example. And a lot of these recommendations specifically came from students at Shell Middle School. And second, social emotional learning. A lot of the students shared concerns that social and emotional learning isn't consistently or effectively implemented specifically during their homeroom periods at Showalter. And they recommended interactive and community building social and emotional learning activities rather than like the pass-fail approach and advisory and like note taking like off of slides. And third, they wanted academic balance and curriculum rigor because some of the students expressed feeling overwhelmed by closely scheduled testing and requested like exams and academic deadlines to be more spaced out. And they also highlighted that the need to enhance the rigor, at the same time, the need to enhance the rigor of engagement and the science curriculum, specifically also at Showalter. And so our programs, which Aiden is gonna go more deeply into, students voiced like some significant concerns over potential budget cuts to the arts programs, and talked about the importance in fostering creativity and preparing for future careers for the students who also go into that field. And lastly, conflict resolution education. Students also requested more structured opportunities to learn to go against for conflict resolution skills, especially to navigate interpersonal relationships effectively, and also to talk about the broader political climate, because we also had some discussions around that. So around the room, students talked about anxiety around potential threats to public education and feeling disconnected from political decision making, especially some of the political talks around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and like that's going around. And we also share appreciation for the recent district resolutions that protect and support students and families, but there's also a desire for clear communication and actions at the classroom level to ensure equity and commitments are visible daily. And the specific district resolution I'm talking about is about the whole thing going around with ICE and like they're not allowed to prosecute or go after anyone like that's like not committing because it's just specifically going after people who are committing crimes. And additional requests from the students included improve communications around district policies through homeroom presentations and increase social media usage. And also making board meeting summaries easily accessible for the entire community in all of the schools across the district, and expanding mental health supports beyond counselor interactions. And we also talked about like how a lot of students haven't even heard of like the recent talks line that they can call if they're distressed about anything. So we also talked about one-to-one communication around that to go to all of the schools. And yeah, so moving forward, the Student Advisory Board remains committed to amplifying student voices and ensuring all of our scholars feel valued, heard, and empowered. And our next steps involve strengthening social and emotional implementation and enhancing communication strategies. So thank you for listening.
Would you mind sending us that list?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and then the other thing that would be really beneficial, I think, from my standpoint is, those are all really important things. And I love, it sounds like some of them also seem like really great opportunities to leverage y'all's solution,
Mhm.
right? Your solution brainstorming, because particularly if I think about like, how do we get certain messaging out to students?
Yeah, we talked a lot
Yeah,
about
yeah.
like receiving tipping points and like basically mailing out more letters because students felt like they got more consistent communication and like receiving it through that. So you just touched a little bit on that, and that's also in the documents also.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then, yeah, just maybe that could be a great way to like identify one or two and then kind of hone in on what are some solutions we might could actually implement. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so since the last board meeting as my role as sophomore student rep, I work with two of our other student representatives to create the superintendent student advisory board meeting, which I unfortunately wasn't able to attend that one, but if you were there, I created a video to like a little get to know me on my position and why I decided to run for that position. And, that was kind of my way of introducing myself to the people who attended that meeting who haven't met me yet. But I also attended the portrait of graduate meeting with Aiden, which we both decided to like kind of take the lead for. And we both decided that the portrait of a graduate meeting went smoothly overall, but the people who attended the meeting were mostly students at Foster who were like, it was a mix of students who were either on the class cabinet or they weren't, but they also collectively decided that the reason for most students attending Running Start is due to a lack of rigor in our classes offered for juniors and seniors at Foster. But talking about that with the adults in the room, we still believe the meeting went smoothly and we were just curious on what's to happen next after we had the meeting. But we feel that we advocated well for the voice of the Foster community and are hoping to see updates from them.
Okay. Before I get going with my little arts spiel, I'll kind of add on to, the portrait of a graduate meeting. Yeah, I believe it went very well. I think, it was very interesting. I think every student on that committee kind of presented a united front. It was kind of weird because we didn't talk at all before the meeting and we all said pretty much the same exact thing. In my talks with, other staff members on that committee and other students, one of the things that was brought up, I found kind of funny was, you bring in a whole committee of honor students, AP students, college and high school students, and then they all tell you that they want more AP classes, more honors classes, more college and high school classes. What else are you gonna get? But anyway, I believe it went very well. I'm excited to see the fruits of that. I'm excited to see more students of different perspectives, have their voice heard in future meetings to make sure that, the portrait of the graduate produces a, high school plan for Foster that will, help all of our students and get where they want to go post-secondary. So today for my report, I'll be bringing forward some issues that are prevalent to the arts community in the Tukwila School District. As we get closer to the end of the budget committee and therefore the next year's budget being created, first, I'm going to read a statement from the general art teacher at Foster, Mr. Serino. If I had it pulled up. I just had it up. There. After talking with my department, we have a couple of findings. First, while my own budget has not decreased this year, same amount of dollars as last year, the price of some goods has gone up. Things from paper, clay, glaze, and other materials has risen in prices, so my budget does not stretch as far as it once did. Mr. Maynard also mentioned the price of sheet music going up as well. One issue I've had in the past has been with custodian. 2 years ago, they mistakenly threw out buckets of clay and the buckets themselves totaling an estimated amount of around $220. I've not been reimbursed for this, nor are there plans after failing to reach an agreement with custodial last year. While we understand we can't control the price of goods from the vendors that we order, if there are any ways that we can increase my art budget along with choir/music, we would definitely appreciate any extra funds. I currently have only about $27 left in my budget to stretch until June. So I have definitely had to get creative with recycling and reusing supplies this year. I've heard similar stories from Mr. Chen and Mr. Remainer regarding instrument repairs. So General Art has pretty much run out. They've run out of money from first semester. They only have $27 left in their budget for the rest of the school year. We have what, 4 months left? For the next part, I'm going to hand out some of these real instruments that middle school scholars are currently using at Showalter. So I think it is a good visual to how the budget is currently affecting the arts. This is a plastic trombone. Thank you. And I have also here a plastic horn, I believe. Yeah. These instruments, the band teacher has had to buy out of pocket. They are upwards of about $100 each. And now I'm going to read a statement from the band director for the Tuckahoe School District. I, Mike Chen, band director for the Tuckahoe School District, would like to offer the following reflections on the music budget as of March 2025. The Tuckahoe School District owns many dozens of instruments. However, most of those instruments are in poor condition or practically unplayable. I've had to turn away 5th grade band students due to not being willing to loan out these unplayable instruments. Due to the high number of students who are in middle school band, but also have told me that their parents cannot afford to get them instruments, I've had to loan out some barely playable instruments. However, I do not believe that this is a good idea for 5th grade beginning elementary band. The 5th graders deserve instruments that actually work. So as to not discourage and stop playing, I have to turn away potential 5th grade band students due to not having any instruments that actually work. Due to my priorities for building a band program, I prioritized instrument loans based on seniority and other factors, resulting in most middle and high school scholars getting loaner instruments, but no 5th graders. I realize that the district is in a severe financial crisis, so I should be prudent about spending the budget that I do have. I have almost depleted the high school music fund meant to be shared between high school choir and band. And due to not having had access to middle school music funds until this week. Due to bureaucratic requirements and miscommunication, only recently has Mr. Baloff, the choir teacher and middle school music department chair, has been granted access to the middle school music budget funds. Although this will unlock a significant amount of money for repairs for middle school instruments, it will probably only be able to cover repair of less than 10 instruments. Still forcing me to prioritize repairs based on instrument needs of the band program and seniority of students at the end of the day. 5th graders without parent provided instruments will still not be able to join the band this year. So as to not deplete the limited music budget, I have bought a few cheap plastic instruments such as plastic trombone and a plastic baritone horn with my own money, not district money, in order to provide a working instrument to a couple of 6th grade students. I'm asking in the following months that the school board and the superintendent consider raising the budget for the arts in the Tuckahoe School District to allow our students to flourish. I was a member of the middle school band when I was in Showalter, and if I had to play on a plastic trumpet, I would have given up that passion that made me feel motivated to come to middle school. If you were to come to the choir concert last week or the band concert 2 weeks ago, you would have seen the amazing talent that we have here at Tukwila. And cuts to those programs is a cut to the passions that the students that we do have. I know firsthand the hardships that come from cuts to the arts, and not every student who has a passion has the tools or the resources to successfully form a club or find another outlet for that passion. And that passion will burn out. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
And thank you for that report. I think it's good stuff to think about as we're getting in the budget season. I think
Okay.
I appreciate your advocacy. I also encourage and hope that those staff feel comfortable to come in front of us and speak for themselves as well
Mhm.
as, yeah, so, again, appreciate your advocacy and everything that you shared. It's received. And I hope that those adults can begin advocating for themselves. Okay, superintendent report.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. And as a fellow, I don't know if people know, I played band from fourth grade to 12th grade. So, I'll be following up with Aiden on some of these
But
things.
we don't get that money.
Yeah.
I don't know where it comes from.
Well, and I'm actually, just to share a little, I'm going off script a little bit, but, I got a friend who reached out to me and, offered scholarships for arts and band, specifically for band, for instrumental music. And I sent it to all the principals, I sent it to the instrumental music teachers. I'm not saying it's just grants, but it was a way to supplement some of this stuff. And of all the teachers I emailed, only 2 applied and they got the grant. They got it right away. It wasn't even like you have to apply. It was like, Concy, we want to give this to your teachers. They just have to fill out the form. So I think there's twofold things. One is making sure that we look, because what I heard very deeply is costs are rising, which is the same thing. Our insurance is going up, everything's going up, utilities are going up, on and on. Those things are real. So figuring out how to mitigate for that, but also working with supplement where we can. And me following up directly with some of the teachers to make sure that they understand, like they would have gotten it, like they would have gotten the money, and figuring out how to make sure, and then following up with my friends and saying, hey, can we get some more of that money? And maybe bigger chunks of that money since you have it, or anybody left over, because they know we need it. So anyway, I've got some work to do in figuring out what to do to support some of that. So I was all state band in 12th grade, so I'm very passionate about band, oboe, clarinet, just saying. Oboe and clarinet, so this matters to me, and every one of my brothers and sisters played an instrument. My grandfather played an instrument. I have 3 bands in my family. This is a big deal. So I just want to share with you, this is a big deal. But we got to figure out, I don't have a ton of money to give throw at this. But we have to figure out how to support music, right? We have to figure out how to support the arts, and we have to figure out, there's so many things we have to figure out, so we gotta figure that out. So if I can find some grants and other opportunities to help mitigate for some of this, we'll do so. Anyway, and I'll follow up with my people to find out what happened. So anyway, so I digress. Anyway, happy it's sunny, you guys. And it's hot in here. Just a couple of things. Celebrations, I'm gonna start with a couple of celebrations. First of all, let's give a big round of applause to our Foster High School robotics team. They advanced the competition. They were here at the last board session, and even though they didn't win at the finals, at least they exemplified to me just leadership and collaboration, just were so amazing. We just finished up our dual language and heritage language celebration just a moment ago. We had folkloric dancing. We honored those members of the community. I'm gonna say a shout out to Dr. Frumstead, who's here because she is the school leader that brought dual language to Cascade View. So I want to shout you out for that. Thank you. And this is the 2nd year that we are now in place with the dual language program in Tukwila School District. So that's a big deal. I want to also give a shout out to Principal Latanya Parker, who was honored with a scholarship in her name from the Black Student Union. And that was done about 2 weeks ago. And that was amazing to see and witness and see how the Black Student Union honored all of the staff members that they've appreciated. So I just want to say, and by the way, Ms. Parker was totally surprised, she had no idea. it was amazing to see, so it's really honored to be there, so, anyway, and so let's give him a round of applause. I was holding on to it and I'll pass it on to Ms. Fleming to hand it, but it's a dear Superintendent Dr. Pedroza, on behalf of the officers, directors, and member of WASBO Certification Governance Board. So WASBO is the Washington Association of School Business Officials. We don't always get to honor some of our district admin folks. It is a pleasure to inform you that Moses Naguna, accountant, has received the prestigious designation of a certified school business specialist in accounting. And so we have now another certified expert in this work, and so I just want to honor him. He's got a smile on his face. He's always helping. He's just so amazing, and he really is interested in working on his craft and his support of our school district. So I wanted to shout him out here. So I thought that was really cool. Anyway, and then just a couple of district updates. Highline College invited our team. We're still planning. We're planning bi-weekly with Highline College for Chippewa Promise. And so they invited us. So we got to go and see their cohort model. We got to meet their staff. We got to visit all the spaces that our kids will go to. It was so funny. I think Director Berto and I and Principal Parker walked to a corner and we went, yeah, our kids are gonna do great here. It was just that moment of like, this is gonna be, it fits. It was just such a great synergy moment, and we got to share and plan, and we're making progress. So that's we've got to go through some project management tasks, and we're making a lot of progress, and it's happening fast. So we're just really excited that we've got the synergy and we're going, and we will be ready for our seniors this year. We are going to be ready for our seniors. Budget Advisory Committee, that is work that's ongoing. So the new leadership team, that is really hard to come into a space and share your thoughts. And you were actually very vulnerable, I think, and it's hard, right, to say, this is feedback, and your principal's sitting there, your teachers are sitting there. So I just want to honor you all for doing that, because that is not an easy feat. Also, just, we had our final coffee with Harley and Concy. We received feedback as well, better times, better this, better locations, and so we're gonna plan that out a little bit.
More and more people.
But every time we had more and more people come along, so that was great. So, and we had food too, so I don't know.
That helps.
More than coffee. And then, just wanna say that we're continuing that budget advisory. That's gonna be wrapping up soon, so we're hoping that we can get some really good feedback moving forward on that. And then, I just want to thank the student directors. People like this, but people don't know what they're doing. They're so committed. The Superintendent Student Advisory Board, like, they don't just facilitate, they plan. They meet with Director Berto. They're there. And what I appreciate what they do. So it's, even though it's a Superintendent Advisory Board, and you would not believe this, and I'm saying this right now, I hardly speak, right? They do all the speaking, they facilitate, and they make everyone feel safe. That's the point, right? To make people feel safe so that they can really say what they want to tell their superintendent, what they want to improve. So I appreciate that space. I try to just listen and lean in and let them facilitate, and they do a really nice job. And then lastly, so just to give some specific feedback on WIAA, I've been watching this for a while. Director Moore and I have been speaking about this, and we're trying to focus where we have influence, right? And so we co-drafted a letter, and then I worked with some of the superintendents and got some additional feedback on the letter, because my goal is to get this letter in front of the WIAA board and their rep assembly and the athletic directors and then some of the superintendents. And so right now, this region represents the largest number of athletes in the state. And so we already have about, I think I said 8 or 7, and I think I have 2 that are gonna let me know by Friday. So their target is to let me know by Friday. And then I'm gonna put all those signatures on the letter, and then on Monday, on the 31st, I'm gonna send it to the WIA Board of Assembly, because you're right, they're starting to vote on April 7th. So I'm kind of backwards mapping that way. So we are on it, and we'll figure out a way to make it visible so people really understand what this is about. But it's been hard, right? Because I'll be honest, not all boards are in alignment and in agreement. And so this is something that we are, trying to be thoughtful about and be respectful of, but at the same time, I know a lot of the superintendent's hearts, they want to sign, and so we're working on it. I'm nudging people. We're getting there. My goal is to get a certain number equal to the amount. And really the purpose is we've had our athletes, they like Joe said, Mr. Camacho said, we've been doing this for more than 5 to 6 years. And so, and we haven't had any incidences or any of the things played out that what they're claiming. And so what we're trying to do is give a counter narrative. That is what an anti-racist district does, is provide the counter narrative to a narrative. And that's what we're working on to do. So I want to thank you for bringing this to the attention here, and we're on it. But we need everyone on it too. So thank you for sharing. And that's all my report.
Any questions, comments? Okay, let's move to director reports. We can maybe end this way since you'll go into your legislative reports. Maybe we'll start with Director Poole.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say kudos to Principal Parker. I got to attend the event that the SU students put on, and it was actually a celebration of African American Month, and basically they were delayed for a couple of logistical reasons, and so it kind of spilled over into March. But I think, you know, I've always wondered, because I always think after Black History Month, is Black History is all year round. So, but what was amazing is just taking a couple of pictures and just a piano and watching the connection between her and the students at the time she got the reward. And there are many other coaches and other people who have the same kind of connectivity with the students. But it's just magical here in Tacoma when you see what's going on in the culture and how people kind of bond together at the youth level. You're so lucky to go to school there. You have no idea. The spirit here in Tacoma is different than many other places. Wanted to also acknowledge I went today and they were ready with certificates for each one of us on the board at the dual language heritage. I'm sorry, the dual heritage language program in Tacoma. 2 years old is a pretty high bell to ring. I'm pretty excited. Sat down with the teachers and PTO people, kind of thinking I was just going to be in the back, and learned a lot more. Another event I wish I had attended, the PTO put on that, they invited the reptile man, and I missed it.
Yeah.
They had this huge, was it a python? It's like enormous yellow.
Praise the Lord.
And I saw a picture of at least 7 people hold this thing. So, you know, what can I say? There's some events that just swing and a miss.
Okay.
I do want to give kudos. I was so excited to see both choir here and the robotics team come by. I got all excited about going, well, I'll back it up. Saturday, I revved up and I went to Bob Hasegawa, Senator Hasegawa's town hall here at our library at Foster High School, which is kind of neat that they made that selection to connect with the community. And we learned about HEPA filter programs and grants, in which a couple of us came running to the superintendent and saying, hey, you gotta connect with those people that are doing some good stuff. The basic thing is that when you live in communities that live around airports, the what's it called? I've got anesthesia in my head, asthma.
Yes.
Rates are extremely high. There are a lot of other health issues that come with it too. And that's why these grants are floating around both statewide and have been federally. So hoping we're gonna be able to take advantage of that. Then I know it's not the school, but I think the school of Pool Lake is pretty strong. We drag Senator Hasegawa over there to watch our youth be involved in Ed Hunt and get further involved in helping to understand what future they want to take with that pool and that facility. But what's most exciting for me was just watching all the ones who are like the lifeguards and everything. They're from Foster High School and middle schools. They're all really, you know, students who have jobs and are paying them fair wages. And I just thought that was an important thing to bring back from that. I was exhausted. I'm at the end of the cold. It's the second week in a row I went home, and I was lamenting. I was thinking that now I'd better go down to Auburn and watch the robotics team. And lo and behold, there was a link that taught me what the competition was like, the video, and which so I understood how they were engaging. And then another link that took me to live, and they had 2 or 3 camera coverage of what's going on. I'm just going to read. I was exuberant, so I sent the mentors and leaders who had sent me the email in the first place. Thank you for, you know, great comment. And it's fun to watch. And just 2 things I want you to know that I learned from his email back. We ranked 9th place out of 34 teams, which is pretty amazing. We had a couple setbacks, so I think we're even higher ranked than they are. We actually won the Industrial Design Award given to the team that demonstrates industrial design principles, striking a balance between form, function, and aesthetics. And they believe the judges seemed especially impressed with the team's engineering narrative, which they call the story of art. So, that's, you could see that they had a whole set of values that go around these competitions about collaborating, working together. They would change entire teams up and be working together more, and how, the better you did, the more you got to choose who your partners were as you advanced. And the whole time, they're just tuning and keeping their robots ready to go do these drills that they didn't have much lead time on. So I talked a long streak about this, but these are our engineers of the future, and I'm really, really excited. What I saw is a tiny but mighty team, and I think he gave me a list here of, I would say it's around 20 folk. We saw most of them when they visited us, but some of the teams that we saw from like Mill Creek, et cetera, they must have had 50 to 100 kids on a team. And you could tell they're well supported financially. So I think we need to reach in deep to try to find sponsors and support this program, because literally they could be designing our cars, our spaceships, our bridges, and I just want them to get the best that they can get. Thanks.
Nothing to report.
I'm gonna take my, time to, read, written statement. You've all heard me say before, safety, inclusion, and belonging are prerequisites to a positive and effective learning environment. The safety of all of our scholars, staff, community members, and fellow humans is deeply important to me. Safety is critical for all students, but fear should never be weaponized to erode the civil rights of any student in our public school system. Well, there's a lot that may feel outside of our control, but we're really far away. I urge you to see the ways this is happening right here in our backyard. In early April, the WIAA Representative Assembly will vote on amendments aimed at undermining the safety, belongingness, and civil rights of transgender and gender expansive students in the state of Washington. This amendment is about segregating student athletes based on narrow and oversimplified notions of sex and gender. These amendments are a violation of state and federal non-discrimination laws, rules, and guidelines that prohibit Washington K-12 public schools from engaging in discrimination on the basis of gender identity and gender expression. These amendments promote the narrative that the perceived safety of cisgender girls is more important than that of transgender and gender expansive students, which is a dangerous precedent to set. We've seen this strategy before. Throughout various points in our history, the perceived safety of women and girls, more specifically white women and girls, has been used as a tool to reinforce stereotypes, maintain power, and uphold the race, sex, and class-based caste system in the United States. Here's the reality. Forcing transgender students to participate in sports segregated by their sex assigned at birth will have consequential impacts on their mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Singling out transgender students puts them at enormous risk for physical harm, verbal assault, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and could cause social emotional distress and/or suicide ideation. There is no factual information or data speaking to the necessity for such a change to our system. This may come as a surprise to many of you, but trans people have always existed since the beginning of time. Transgender and gender non-expansive people have also been competing at all levels of sports, both locally and nationally, for decades. Trans athletes make up a tiny fraction of student athletes. According to OSPI, they say that out of nearly 250,000 student athletes in the state of Washington, roughly 5 to 10 of them self-identify as transgender. I'd argue that there are more.
initiate some support around the arts and the music, and so, if I can get I'd like to be able to work with bridging that gap, short term, long term, and the budget stuff, we can work on, but I wanna get concrete costs of what it takes to replace what needs to be replaced or fix what needs to be fixed. And I gotta get up to speed on if we can figure out how to raise that money through community donation, what does that look like? I don't wanna cash in favors and then it's sitting somewhere bureaucratically because I can't use it. Now, we're gonna get that money and we're gonna get those instruments. You said you come from a band family, and bands, well, I've been kicked out of band all from middle school now. So I'm gonna start supporting this.
Well, especially if they didn't let you in.
They let me in, but I wasn't playing music, they were in trouble.
That's true.
Well, I learned to play now, so. But we want to support that, so if you get me connected via email and get some concrete. I know enough people philanthropically who are tied to the arts. That if I just raise the alarm that the middle school needs, but we need specifics. I need 5 horns, 2 trumpets replaced, 3 repaired, and X amount of dollars. We can get that, but I need to get up to speed with you, because I don't know.
No, that's fine, we can work it, that's easy, we can work it, just wanna make sure we can figure out the next pieces on that.
So,
If there's-
I'm excited,
Yeah,
that type of stuff gets me going.
well, I did send, Director Howard. I'm calling you down for. It's just a connection so we can kind of connect the dots.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Thank you. Good for us.
So I have a few, things, went to the Northwest Council of Computer Education, conference up in Seattle, and there's a couple of interesting, whenever we go to, discussing technology in education these days, it's all about artificial intelligence. So there's lots of things going on in that area. You know, I know we have guidelines and we have some starting to, working on getting people trained and usage, but it's a huge issue and it's one of the areas that we need to prepare our students for the future. And so hopefully we can get hooked in with a lot of that stuff. There's some interesting technology around artificial intelligence and translation services. I know we've been working, you know, we've bought all kinds of different translation, we have translation services, but turns out the AI programs, ChatGPT and so forth, can do a pretty good job. We actually saw some demonstrations of it translating on the fly with people. So, you know, anyway, there's another translation tool that has potential. Also went to a really interesting session that Bellevue has on heritage languages. They have a whole heritage language program around Arabic up in Bellevue. And so anyway, there's lots of stuff going on in the technology world. The Budget Advisory Committee, so we have one more meeting and be working through the some of the priorities for the discretionary dollars. Our CFO was kind of waiting for the budget to come into the legislature, which has now come in. So we have a little better idea about what kind of money we might have. And so the last session will be looking at prioritizing the list. We have a pretty long list and hopefully we'll get some feedback to the superintendent as we go forward for next year's budget. I did go to the choir and band concert that was talked about. The nice thing about the band concert was there was a lot of people there. I mean, I would say, I don't know, maybe half the pack was filled with people, which is as many as I've seen for a while. So it speaks to the support that those students have. And so, you know, I'm completely on board with trying to figure out how to get, you know, it's kind of disheartening to see plastic instruments up there. And so we'll figure that one out. We'll just get that one going. And the choir concert was really nice as well. Not quite as many people, but there weren't as many choir members. By the time you start putting in family and friends, and the more people you have, the more the pack could fill up, which is great. And we still need to work on the communication of them when those events are happening, because I think more of our community would likely come in if they knew when it was. I did sit down, actually, I was in a conference call with some student representatives from different school districts in the area. And one of the things they were talking about was how they go about reporting to the board. And there was a really interesting one from Issaquah School District. You know, he was talking about the portrait of a graduate and the fact that, you know, a lot of the leadership students and the students that were interested in, you know, more rigorous courses and college going and all that were there, which is great because we need to hear from them. But the question becomes, how do we hear from other students? And Issaquah did this in an interesting way. So their student reps actually went into the advisory hours, which we have at Foster as well, and gave them, you know, asked them a bunch of questions about their survey, what they thought about academics, for example, in this case. And so that could be, I just throw that out as an interesting idea that we might be able to, it's a way of bringing in all the students, because everybody goes to advisory. And I know over the years, there's been, you know, a lot of students that don't particularly appreciate advisory and the value of it too much. But anyway, just throw that one out idea, and I'd be happy to give anybody the reference up to the Issaquah student reps that talk about that really well. Let's see, I just wanted to kind of also latch on to what you were saying about the portrait of a graduate and the need for some feedback. I know there was some discussion after the students at the next meeting for student lists. There was discussion among the staff and so forth that was on the board about, you know, what happened. And so I think a lot of that feedback, we need to get that back to students. And I'm a big fan of, you know, so often, you know, we ask students for input and then they never hear from us again. So we need to, you know, take that input, acknowledge what came in, give them some feedback, and have a few discussion loops going there, as opposed to just taking the input because they don't know. Did they hear it? Who knows? I did want to comment. I did go down to Auburn and see the robotics team, which this is their second. They have 2 weekend competitions that they go to, and that potentially can qualify them for just what they call district level, which is actually, it's kind of bigger than state, because it's Washington and Oregon together as the district. And they came about, like, I think 5 points short of being qualifying for the district level, which is in Cheney this year. So they had a really good competition. As Director Fuller mentioned, they won the industrial design, that's a really interesting one, because it's kind of the combine of what I call form and function. So, you know, if you were here last time when they came in and showed their robot, one of the things they had on there, which was a machined etching of their, for example, their mascot, and so, which is really nicely done. And so that was kind of the design elements, and then they had a really good function as well. So anyway, really good work by all of that team at this year's competition. Do you want me to go into the?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened in the legislature, the big thing was this last week, the budgets came out from the House and the Senate. This is the starting point. So there will now be a House budget, a Senate budget, and the governors, and then over the next month or so before the end of session, everything will need to kind of be hammered out. As usual with these budgets, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that there's, in terms of our big gaps and holes, special education, actually, there's a bill that's coming through that would actually close most of our gap in special education. That's been their emphasis this year, so hopefully that one will hang on. For the material supplies and operating costs, which is the other big hole we have, and as all districts have, they're only going to cover we have about a 40% hole, and they're only going to cover about 8%, which is the proposal. So better than nothing, but not anywhere near covering the whole thing. And they're doing so far basically nothing for the transportation cost hole that we have, and also for the substitute teacher hole that we have. So there is some progress. Hopefully that'll get through the whole process. There's still, some fairly big, uncertainties out there. Probably the biggest one is what's going on at the federal government level. I think from what I'm getting, the big chunks of money that we're getting from the federal government, Title I for the lower income and IDEA for special education, those are probably pretty safe, but it's a lot of the smaller grants that may be questionable, in particular for us, what we call the OSSI grants, the WARE grants that go to 3 of our schools based upon their scores on the Washington State School Improvement Framework. Those may be more questionable. We'll have to see. I mean, we'll probably get them this year if OSBI. I understand OSBI. I mean, I was kind of asking, why haven't we got them already? And it's apparently because OSBI was short-staffed and they aren't finishing it out, which is kind of a lame excuse. But anyway, particularly since, you know, those are the schools that need the money the most. So why do they not staff? Anyway. But for coming years, we'll have to kind of watch those kind of grants and figure out whether we can do it or not. There's another interesting, so part of the reason they were able to, at least put forward special education is that there's several new revenue bills that are being floated for. The Democrats have been talking for some time about taxing wealth and not work, and so there's a big wealth tax that would be brand new. It's a tax on stocks and bonds if you own over $50 million. So it's super high level tax. It's that particular kind of wealth tax I don't think is done by any other state in the country. So it's pretty innovative. And I think it's probably, hopefully the Democrats have done their work and to say that it's legally pretty sound. But the interesting thing about that is the way they wrote that is it will be dedicated for education going forward. So that's a really good thing. And you know, they have some other taxes on high income payroll tax, and the other part of this is interesting is they're actually going to lower the sales tax, which is extremely high in the state, by about 0.5%, to try and the whole thing. They're trying to make the tax system less regressive, more progressive. So tax high and less tax on low. And unfortunately, as far as the regressivity of the education funding system, they really didn't do anything to do that. That's one that we still have to work on in coming years. But anyway, there's some relatively good news, especially around the special education funding, and we'll see if they end up actually coming through with that as we go through the rest of the session. So that's it. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna talk about that now. Yeah, thanks. So this is the time of year when WASDA accepts proposals or changes to proposals for existing legislative positions. And this is one that I'm proposing to put in. Legislative proposals need to be approved by the board, so it's later on our agenda for an action item. But it's a simple one. This is the current legislative positions, and I'm simply adding the word equitably. So the legislature fully, amply, and equitably fund, you know, all the programs of basic education. This particular, the reason I went after this particular one is after the body, the WASDA group passes their legislative positions, they do go through a prioritization process to see which is the most important, and school district vote on that, which I always bring in and show you guys. This particular legislative position was the #1 position last year. And unfortunately, I mean, we have equitably in lots of other positions in WASDA, but I really want it in this one because it's the #1 one, and it gives direction to WASDA, which I've been, you know, fighting with for years, to push the equitable side of funding more and more. So anyway, that's a proposal that I would propose to put in and see. I think it should pass, but we'll see. So I don't know, if anybody has any questions about that, we can discuss it now and then okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it.
All right, that brings us to our consent agenda. So I get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of putting our consent agenda?
Okay.
All right, next we got some items for board, business and discussion. The first is just kind of looking at our board business and discussion document, to identify any, action steps, any, questions that might be coming up, or if there's something I might be missing.
I guess the one thing, do we need to add, oh, let's see, I guess I just saw it, cell phone policy, never mind. The other one was in the Board of Directors handbook. The CFO and I were talking about potentially putting some guidelines in there for what look for is in the financial statements.
That's at our next,
Okay,
board work session.
okay,
We have lots of discussion.
okay, so you might just add that as under the notes that we will discuss that at the next board work session.
And you got highlighted in yellow, care team presentation, or would this make sense? I was curious. Who's asking, and should we discuss that now?
That was a care team presentation and is supposed to be decided when or where that would make sense to have it as a presentation to the board.
Yeah, to me, it makes either those, the teaching and learning or special education presentation, either of those could be part of one of those presentations.
Question about the board, the cell phone policy. Is that something that one of us should work to draft a policy to bring forward, or would this be something that your team would do?
I have somebody already working
Great.
on it, and
Okay.
they're, working with, getting feedback from. Right now, they're just doing research, so they're doing research and studying other district policies right now. And then I think the next step is to talk with the principals, and I think they want to bring it to the student advisory, so I think those are the 3 steps. But I have somebody working.
Okay, so there's nothing actionable for us
No,
right
I
now.
think that target is to have something in front of the board between June and July for implementation in the fall of 25, 26. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, the only other one, and I know is being worked on is the board of directors and city council meeting.
I did put a request in with the mayor, but right now he's doing his big
Yeah,
forum.
yeah.
I think after that,
Yeah.
we can talk about it, yeah. But I could put a request in and I think I just have to have another meeting soon and talk about it, so.
Okay, great. So the next is the reports and the data template. So this is kind of our first review of the board presentation calendar essentially for next year. And then I think I just wanted to name 1 or 2 other things. So we had talked, I think it was our regular board meeting last month, about really trying to get clear and stay focused on what we expect out of those reports, really making sure that the data that we are getting and the data that we are circling back and asking for is really connected to our strategic plan. And so if we're asking for information or data that is outside of our strategic plan, it's not saying that we can't do that, but we're not going to do it necessarily in the meeting. And so there might be an opportunity for that to, again, add to our board business document that we've got here and to circle back with. Another thing that we are going to do is we're going to make some changes to the question process moving forward. So how this is going to work and the way that we've been operating is that ahead of every board meeting, board members have the opportunity to ask questions in writing, and the team works really diligently. They spend most of their day on Monday and Tuesday answering those questions to give back to the board in writing. So how we are going to shift this, work sessions, we will still have the opportunity to ask the questions, but when those questions get answered will be different, okay? So we can still ask questions ahead of time in the work session, but those questions will be answered in the work session, not in writing back to us. The work sessions are intended to be times where we get deep into things, where we have the time to really discuss those questions. I'd rather focus our staff team's time on gathering that information and bringing it back to us and having those in-depth discussions rather than having them write written responses that then we ask the same question in the meeting. So that's the biggest change for the work sessions. For our regular board meetings, the questions only presentations will be the only questions that get answered in writing. Okay, so that process for the questions only presentations will be the same. We submit written questions, we get written responses. For presentations, which of course are different, similar to like the one we're having with the Long Partnership Discipline Report. Those, we can ask the questions ahead of time, but they will not get answered ahead of time. They will get answered during the presentation. So we're trying to streamline again, when and how questions are getting answered, and also alleviate the significant burden that we're putting on the administrative team every Monday to spend their entire day answering those questions. Do I need to go through any of that again, or what questions or concerns you have about these changes?
Do you have them written up, just
I can,
some sort of doc, so we can kind of
yes,
go back to.
yes, I can send that. Deb will send that out.
So, okay, we'll circulate it, what I heard sounded good, but, you're gonna circulate it, is there gonna be feedback on what's been written?
What do you,
Well, just for time, I heard someone do a recitation, you're gonna send it to us in writing. And if we have feedback, once we have a minute or two sorted out, is there a process for that? I don't personally think I have a problem.
just let me know what it is. Yeah, if you have concerns, once you see it in
I don't know
writing,
that I have a need, I just
let me
want
know.
to make sure there's a space.
Yeah, for sure. Any additional thoughts? So again, you can ask your questions in writing, only the questions, only presentation question will be answered in writing format. Okay, now I hand it over to you to kind of talk us through this, calendar.
Yeah, so we had a discussion at a previous board meeting where we talked about reporting. And so what I did is took the board priority, presentation priorities. I did not touch anything from what was required. So any reports that are in policy or required at the state level or required, for example, tonight we have the highly capable plan that has to get approved to access funding, that's required. So that's an example of something we're not requiring. What I did was I took all of the non-required board presentations. So you see there's many, 2 pages worth of board presentations. And then I made recommendations around what's next. This is just a draft. So this is not, it says here, first draft, first review. It's a draft. And what I wanted to make sure is that with the rationale, so that we could spend time asking questions around this. And so what I did is I took anything that wasn't required and I labeled, the first column is what it is, the presentation. The second column is where it stood for the 24-25 board presentation calendar. And then what I did for the 25-26 board presentation recommendation. And so for an example is, what I tried to do is center our strategic plan in this. So when you look to the right, I laid that out. So for example, and you can read this on your own, chronic absenteeism. It is a strategic plan goal. So that area of what the goal is should be presented in when we do our mid-year review and our end of year review. So that's what I did is I tried to make sure that anything that was aligned to our strategic plan gets included in those work session presentations. And then we're also bumping out the work session presentations after January. So we actually have data to give a mid-year report. So that's one piece. And I'm also moved around some of the other school improvement plan presentations as well. Finally, I will share, we also are requiring, what I did, if you look at the end, so yeah, leave that right there. I think the other thing, so you look, I actually laid out the potential calendar for all the work sessions. So what it could look like, so ahead of time. So, for example, January, starting with, Showalter Middle School, they're doing their school improvement plan presentation. And then strategic plan goal update, where we do one there, and then continue that work, and then line that up in that order. I moved Foster High School to the end because people really are interested in learning about all the things that they're doing. But they also have done some presentations in the beginning there as well. We can move that around as well, but I thought, let's have that there, because I thought that elementary schools can do that. Finally, I also added in here, because a lot of these are under the programs of teaching and learning. So I felt it was very important because we have actually, we think about it, technology does a presentation, maintenance and operation does a presentation, transportation does a transportation. So congratulations, Chief Whippet, you have one too. And so I thought it was really important that we have a standalone teaching and learning presentation to talk about programs. So some of those now move under that presentation, because I think people want to hear about dual credit. That is under programming, T&L programming. So I moved that under there and that under that present, and they actually are gonna be presenting twice, so it's not once, because I think there's so much programming under T&L. So there's two presentations, and if there's things that not to the satisfaction of the board, we can bring it back at a next, it can be fluid, because they are work sessions. And so, but that's an example, so I'll just share something like dual credit moved under T&L presentation. Lab state report, T&L, summer school, T&L. We moved social emotional learning, mental health under student services, and we're separating that out, student services presentation, and then a special ed presentation. Arts report, T&L programming presentation. Special education update, added T&L presentation. So just making it concise and clear, and also within the context of the certain departments and the certain realms. And so we're reorganizing. We're not saying they're all going away. We did remove a few of them, but making sure that what we're doing is in alignment to what we're doing under teaching and learning in terms of programming. And then looking at student outcomes for strategic planning. They're very different things. Talking about highly capable programs and what we're doing and how we're doing it is different than looking at our strategic plan goal that's talking about making sure more students have access. Very different things. And so that is the way, this is just a first draft of how I looked at reorganizing this, but to making sure that the reports we're actually giving are aligned to what we're actually trying to do. So anyway, I just put this out here for review. I can take feedback, there can be some changes. But I did lay out under specific, like, for example, VITA is the last one, then that should be under equity and empathy. And making sure that that is included in that. And if there's more data needed, then we can do that at that time. Gifted and advanced coursework, right? That's more about, that's related to the outcomes, getting more students involved in that. That is a strategic plan goal. If it's just about ensuring we have the coursework and numbers, that would be under teaching and learning. So anyway. Are there any questions?
My initial feedback is just I really appreciate the alignment with the report and the like program that it falls under. I think that'll help us as a board, like see the bigger picture and understand like where it all fits. Because right now everything's just kind of like separate.
Yeah.
And so I think that'll be, I know that'll be really helpful for me.
Yeah, it's more pressure on them to do one comprehensive report, but it means they're not coming up here 5 different times with 5 different separate programs that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it just means they have to be pre-planned on making sure what they're giving to you is relevant. And I think it also helps, I think for, especially if we bring on new board members, right? Thinking about all the work and learning, like, so when you're thinking about transportation, that's super clear, right? But then thinking about all the other programming, that's not as clear because there's so many, so. Open to feedback, open to thoughts, but I just hope this is a first review. So just thought I would put this out as my first thinking about way to organize the work under our goals.
Okay, so, healthy use survey removed. So the two things that I care about in the healthy use survey is questions related to bullying and feeling safe and belonging and all those things. So the question is, can we do that? Is there another way to do that? Or, so healthy use survey is every 2-year thing.
Yeah.
It certainly could be, I just.
Yeah.
I don't particularly necessarily care how that's done, but we need to collect that kind of information. So it could be, rethinking the CE structure
Or the student services component.
Right.
I mean, right. So because at student services, that's the social worker, it could be under that realm, and they use the CE data and all of that.
If we eliminate the report, still want to see that. And I had the same feeling. I still want that data to be integrated somewhere, so we can kind of see it reflected.
Yeah, and I think it's not, because we're still doing the survey, it's not that we're not doing it,
Right.
But
but
we still need to see the full.
yeah, but then we don't get to see the full report. I just making sure it's incorporated in our goals around social emotional learning, right? And HIB and reporting and belonging and all of those pieces. So, okay, that's good feedback. Anything else, Director Larson?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So the walk kids removal, so the concern I have about that is how are we keeping track of our early learning program? That's one of the measures. I mean, early learning seems to have been swept off the list here,
Yeah.
which is not a good thing because we know that's foundational. And so walk kids is a way of kind of determining, and there's actually maybe a better way through I'm forgetting now the words. The state has a rating system for our early learning programs, which actually, for example, Cascade View has one of the highest ones fairly consistently. So I just want to make sure that early learning doesn't get totally swept off the screen here. And whether you can include it in,
it'd be under probably teaching and learning.
yeah, of course, it's interesting.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, but that's why we took out the walk kids, because it's actually, if you look here, early learning is under teaching and learning
Okay.
education.
Okay,
So walk kids as a standalone would actually be included in that, so I'll just change that and make that clear.
okay.
Maybe I'll put early learning and walk kids, I'm just trying to make sure, it doesn't make sense to have an early learning report here, a walk kids report here, and then a program report here, I'm saying let's pull it together. Pull it together, so
Yeah.
happy to make that
Yeah.
change.
I'm good with that. So the early warning indicators, I'm assuming, so the early warning indicators are things like ninth grade on track, absences. So I'm assuming that that's another one that's included in the other
Strategic
places.
plan, yeah.
Okay, that's good. So formative assessment data, are you talking about all the iReady reports? So the one that I care about, of course, is the growth aspect of that. I mean, we've gotten lots of big iReady reports that have lots of proficiency in the middle of the year that I don't care about. And so if you can,
That's a strategic plan goal, law, right? So that would be under, and so what I'm saying is remove that standalone report, it's already gonna be reported under, high expectations for all. And it
okay,
actually there's a growth measure that we worked on to be included in that report.
okay,
So I guess when I say they're removing, they're not being removed
yeah.
entirely, but they're being moved,
Yeah.
so.
I guess, it would just be helpful on here.
Sure,
It
sure.
said move to wherever, and
sure.
then I do that.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Let's see what else we got here, okay. Let's see, you have Cogden High School, and I put Cogden High School / AP. I mean, I know we're kind of moving to Cogden High School, which is great, but we probably still need to keep track of it. I know the students care about that one. The other one is one that we're gonna see, it's not in here, that we're gonna see tonight is the Wisconsin Washington School Improvement Framework. I assume that would be under teaching and learning
Yeah.
somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's another one.
Yeah, and I didn't have, it wasn't on, that report wasn't on the original
Yeah,
priorities.
yeah,
But it's on, it's here.
Yeah.
Because it has to be reported on, and that's a state requirement.
Okay, that's
Right, so,
compliance,
yeah,
okay.
it's compliance.
okay. And let's see, this is one we've never gotten a report on, which I look at myself.
Are you gonna add things?
Well, I mean, that's an idea, so.
Yeah.
Because it came up, it comes up when we were talking about the Portland graduate and the fact that our students were expressing concern about, are they well prepared for their next 4-year, whatever? And one of the ways that I look at that all the time is the ERDC reports, the Education Research Data Center reports that come out of the state to say, what percentage of our students went to college, enrolled in college, persisted in college, graduated from college. The first two are the ones that I care about the most is, how many of them are enrolling in college versus a 4-year versus a 2-year. All these things are broken down. So it's a way, and it's one of the things that when we're talking about responsive students, I don't think our students have that data. And they know that actually Foster High School does really well, particularly taking into account the income levels. So anyway, I throw that out there as a thing to think about. You can think about it if you want to do that or not. And then I think, let's see, there's a whole set of things that are, I think it's covered under the school improvement in October. Did you have a school? Foster High School, there's a whole thing about the scholarships that the class had, bilingual certificated by those, all those things that come with
Yeah.
graduation,
Mhm.
that I assume would be in probably the October. That's college and high school, I don't know, anyway.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
We did, Foster High School had 2 reports, so
Yeah,
they did the
yeah.
one with the school improvement plan.
Yeah,
But you're talking about how many students got scholarships,
Yeah,
how many good,
yeah,
how many
yeah.
teachers, that report.
right.
That I can work with Principal Parker on that,
Yeah.
and that probably could be included in, because what we're talking about doing, if you look here. In October at the very bottom, so can you go to the bottom, Deb, on, and we're just formalizing it. We did it this year, but I want to formalize it in October, having a strategic plan end of year summary reports.
Yeah.
Where we talked about all the goals, the plans, what we did, our data, and having that end of year summary for all of you, and having that written and quantified. And then, but we could include in that additional information from Foster High School in terms of like understanding how many kids got scholarships, we can figure out that piece. It wouldn't be part of the strategic plan, but we can definitely incorporate some of those
Yeah.
pieces there.
Right,
And we actually could get that data pretty easily, I think.
Yeah.
That actually makes me wonder, and earlier in our conversation, mentioned the idea of like really celebrating the things that we're doing well.
Yeah,
And so I wonder if even that's something that we could just build in more consistently into our structure of our meetings even,
yeah,
right, to highlight some of those things. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a report, a presentation that we're getting, but like every meeting, we're highlighting something, you're right, and this, I don't know if there's a way.
yeah, I
to
was calling it, like, me and Naomi, Director Roberta were saying, like, doing even like a once every other Friday, like, did you know? That at Tukwila School District, did you know, like a little did you know campaign, like, did you know that Tukwila School District has some of the highest graduation rates for high poverty districts? Did you know that, you know what I mean, like, there's a lot of great things. Did you know we gave out this much money in scholarships? Did you know we have to quote, like, all these things? So we're just talking about, did you know, a did you know campaign, like, so this is for the community, so that they can hear, did you know that this many of our kids go to 4-year and 2-year colleges? Did you know, did you know, did you know? So we're trying to think that through a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know how to formalize that. But we're trying to think that through about, we've been celebrating with our community, because we met with our parent advisory committee. And that's one of the things that our parent advisory committee is super invested in, is really celebrations. Like, how do we celebrate all the good things happening from a parent perspective? And so we're like, yeah, bring it on, let's do it. But it does take some effort.
it also has the benefit of counteracting the counter narrative
Yes,
against some of the other
counter
stuff that's going on about this
Because
being
there's
a
a
safe
lot of
place.
things happening.
Yeah.
We have one school coming out of school improvement. We have growth in lots of areas, in some of our areas. We need to start sharing.
So the one other, and then you kind of touched on, do we have, the other areas, the food services report, the transportation report, the facilities report.
Those are all under, because those are under policy, those are all under required reports.
Okay.
These
so
are only the non-required reports.
Okay.
These are all the required ones we did not touch. I did not touch, I left them alone. These are only all the non-required reports, and they're not reports. So we're trying to streamline this a little bit and have it make more sense to people and make sure that it's aligned to what we're trying to do.
Okay,
So,
that's all I got.
okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your guidance.
Yeah, it's good. It was actually good. I love like my brain, like, it's good for me.
Okay, so our next item for board discussion is a letter of support for Tukwila Parks and Recreation. And I'm wondering if, are you able to provide a little bit of context around this? If not, I can pull up the.
Yeah, just a little, I'm gonna pull it up right now. So the Tukwila, city of Tukwila is actually writing some grants for property improvement. Just to let the community know, these are properties that Tukwila School District owns and that we rent to the city of Tukwila. And so in order to get these grants, the grantors need approval, basically, or support from Tukwila School District saying, yes, we approve of some of these. So there's things where like asphalting, making sure that there's courts, there's several things in play here. And so those are what we're doing. So our conversation here is just to whether everyone agrees that this is what they want to do, they want to support it, and then when we do, we'll authorize a letter of support to the city of Tukwila so that they can in turn apply for the grant. It doesn't mean they're gonna get the grant, it doesn't mean they're gonna get it, it just means we're saying as property owners that we approve them moving towards these grant applications.
And I guess just so people know, this particular park is down in Allentown. Yep.
It looks good to me.
You know, some of the conversation we've been having is, just trying to look 5 years into the future, 20, 30, 50 years into the future and knowing, but what is do we know what our current lease is for that park?
I believe that we have 10 years left, isn't that correct? I'm just
Okay.
making sure. It's more than what we're doing, it's a little bit longer, I think most of our parks have longer, it's gonna be up for renewal in about 10 years, I think. I don't know where we're at in terms of negotiations, but I do know that we're starting to have those conversations around some of our other properties. And so, like, so rental agreements, making sure that we're have appropriate, rentage, making sure we cover our property taxes, all those increased costs, making sure that we're doing that. And then conversations too, like whatever we need to change. If there's an interlocal agreement, we need to change. But what they're proposing is actually, doing some significant, installations, engineering, fire safety, playground signage, mounted on the poles, regarding some also guidance on, the landowner and the representative Kaboom, that's a group that actually does, I believe it's asphalting or some changes to the playground structure to make sure that it's safe for students. And that's something that to talk about, right? Because I think, some people are like, no, grass only, things like that. But the reality is a lot of our playgrounds, because these are playgrounds, right? There's certain ways that we can provide better safety for kids, right, in different ways. So this is what they're proposing, and then we just have to say we want them to continue to do the outreach. If there's something that the board needs to meet with the city of Tukwila or just get more information, we have that contact and we can get that for you. And if there's something that the board needs for me to check with our district lawyer, I'm happy to do that as well.
It sounds pretty straightforward to me. I mean, it's just putting up the ground with some signs.
So is there a logo policy already in the district? We have sponsorship logo, be it dimensions or that would create problems. Do we have existing policy?
I think we haven't, well, I think we don't have a policy on anything. I don't think we do. But that's something to consider, because once you open the door to that, then it's everybody else coming in,
Well,
you know?
I mean, there's, at Foster High School under the scoreboard.
Yeah.
Inside, there's a.
Yeah, so there's,
Years ago,
yeah,
there's a sign for somebody Chevrolet or something.
yeah.
We need-
Really, that's how long ago it
We need to
was.
get back to it.
Yeah, right.
We did a new
I
one.
mean, it's
Yeah.
city work, but-
We need trumpets and horns.
Yeah.
Is this similar to, the pool in that if we agree to this, that that there's like continued discussion, right?
Yeah.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, the only thing is that this is authorizing them to apply
Right.
for the grant.
And the reason why I ask is I think one of the things that would be really helpful for us, and I know we asked this in the, related to the conversation with the pool, is like, what is our land use plan, right? What are we thinking, long term for the district, and so that we can actually have a better understanding of like, just the potential impact of growth or whatever that might look like. So that we can actually make the best informed decisions to maintain all of the assets that we want in our community, the pools and the parks and all of that. So,
But there's also there's two things. So there's a bill coming forward right now that actually is granting, and this was authorized by a couple districts, authorizing districts, if it passes, would authorize districts to be able to sell land in order to support their basic education funds. So that's one thing, and then, that hasn't gone through yet, but it's going through the legislative session, and then the next piece is, once you guys authorize this, I will send this to our district attorney, just to review it, just to make sure that there's no language in here that actually is worrisome to us, that beholds us to anything, right? So we would do that as well, to make sure that we're protected as an entity, so.
Sounds very similar to, I mean, our biggest property, district's biggest property is Foster Park,
Yeah,
and the city has built stuff on that for years.
yeah. All right, cool. So do I have permission to send this forward with, just make sure I'm- the board's approval, at least move it forward with our attorney, and then we'll move forward with the letter of support.
Do you need a vote or just consensus?
I don't know.
Consensus is probably that,
Yeah,
Okay,
great, and let us know if there's anything that comes up at the end of discussion.
and if there's anyone here with any disapproval or any questions, just let me know too, or let Director Hoover know, and we'll work on that, okay? All right, we are just to give you an update on the other letter, we are working on submitting a letter of support to Tukwila Pool. And they need that by this Friday, so we already have, one language change on it, we're gonna work on getting that in there. And then, we will submit that by Friday, before Friday, it'll probably happen within the next 2 days, but that's on track, just wanted to let the board know that's on
And
track.
that did not come before the board, because we had already discussed it and all those stuff. Okay. All right, great. So now excited to have our presentation, around, the factors and the discipline report. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, I'm Ann Vermont, Director of Student Services in Special Education, and I go by she, her pronouns.
And I'm Stacy Lappin. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of program at Full Partners.
So tonight, we are excited to talk with you about our anti-racist discipline action plan and our partnership with Belong Partners. And so it's work that is extremely important and rooted in our strategic plan. And really just wanting to highlight the areas that we're working and making sure that there's a through line with all of our work centered in our strategic plan that feeds down to our building school improvement plans, that feeds down into the goals and work of each of the individual entities that support this work. All righty. So, as I shared, like our anti-discipline action plan is really rooted in our goals as a district around belonging and safety. And one of the things that I've heard loud and clear tonight and actually every board meeting is around the need for inclusivity, safety, belonging, welcoming, community. And these are all things that we believe are rooted in our plan around our strategic plan, our anti-racist goals as a district, and really thinking about doing what that looks like and naming it. Naming it is that this is work centered around the work the adults need to do within our system in support of the scholars that we are teaching and we are wrapping around support. And so I hear a lot of different things around the work that this encompasses. And so while this is our anti-racist discipline action plan, and we're naming it as that, it's really and truly about the work centered in making sure that all of our scholars feel safe and that they belong and that they are welcome in our community and our families. So just want to name that. So I want to start by celebrating the bright spots within our community. So each of our school leaders has shared a celebration that they're working on in their community. So Cascade View is really focused on their race and equity team alignment and aligning that with the work around their multi-tiered systems of support, their social emotional learning, and really the leadership of that team around that. Thorndike is really celebrating their work around their tiered fidelity and that using that information to guide their practices, guide their professional development plans. Tukwila is really excited about centering on family connections. Those partnerships with families in their work has really reduced the amount of discipline practices within their building. Showalter is really focused on their peer mentor mediations, all of the trained peer mentors, or peer mediators at Showalter have all now participated in a minimum of 2 peer mediation sessions. So they're really excited to celebrate that. And Foster High School is really excited to center their work around their re-engagement and restorative focus around supporting scholars with that work in the school versus excluding them outside of the school. So just want to highlight that. And I also just want to say, these are just very few things of the work. This work, there's celebrations happening every day in every classroom, in the hallways, in the lunchrooms, around how students are feeling welcomed and belong. So just wanted to just call out that this work is really important. And there's a lot of different factors, and there's so many things that lead into it. And so one of the things that we're really working on this year is refining, like, what are our priorities? We know there are many things that we need to address. We know that there is a lot, like, so there's a lot of work to be done here. And we also are really focusing on, like, identifying what are the key factors and key levers that we need to start with, and then go to the next, and then go to the next. So what you're gonna see here is that there's a lot of things that are probably missing that you're not gonna hear about, but it doesn't mean that that work isn't being done. And it also doesn't mean that that work isn't important, and that we recognize that, because we also recognize that because this work is so important, we really need to identify what are the priorities that move us forward in service of getting to where we need to go. And what has been identified in our strategic plan, as well as in our buildings, school improvement plans, is really reducing exclusion of discipline that's disproportionate. And so that's a really key factor there. So just wanted to highlight that. So, what you'll see here is a bit of a timeline that stops in February. We're here in March, actually, nearing the end of March, which is not on here, but wanted to just kind of highlight some of the key things that have happened this year. And again, this is not comprehensive of all of the work that's being done amongst our team and in our buildings, but just wanted to highlight some key things. We have focused on leadership development. We've focused on bringing together the leadership team around strategically looking at the anti-racist discipline action plan with a focus on that. And so separating that is a key piece that we're looking at, bringing the human services team together within this work. The Belong Partners professional development that's happening not only, and Stacey will talk more about this, but it's happening not only in buildings, but it's also happening with the human services team. It's also happening with the leadership team in these areas. And so wanted to really highlight that. There are things that are new this year that have been really focused, like working on bringing together the care team as the human services team and looking at how we're doing our care team process as a whole. And so I know that that's something that I've heard many times from the board about. That's an area of interest. And so that's definitely some work that we're doing to engage in that. And so those are the things that I wanted to call out. We really recognize this is ongoing, and this is not inclusive of everything that we know needs to happen. We know that there's a lot more to be done, and that's important, but we also just want to go slow to go fast, so to speak. And then one key strategy that's different this year from before is one, this work is centered under one area of umbrella and support, but within that, there are different areas that the district team is supporting, and we're all coming together so that we're not working in silos with the teams that we support, but that we're aligned on the support that we're working within the individual teams. So for example, the leadership team, the HOPE team, the race and equity leads, and really kind of bringing all of those together. So that's a strategic change in what we're doing this year that's really exciting. And yeah.
Yeah, I applaud you for that, pulling all the things
Well,
together.
thank you. And Really, I just wanted to just highlight that this work is really just about adaptive change, which is like the heart and soul work of a community. And making sure that we're really looking at the culture, at the climate, how we welcome our scholars, how we hold high expectations for our scholars, and we hold high expectations for ourselves in our commitment to this work. And so really thinking about like restorative practices, really thinking about like, how are we going to bridge this into the classroom? Because that is really where learning needs to happen, and really looking at how we support individual scholar struggles with behavior that lead to exclusive actions as an instructional piece. Like that's an area that we focus on as an instructional need. So looking at our professional development, working with our leadership team, our human services department, circle keepers is really looking at how we can bring restoration circles, our peer mentors and mediation, our work with Belong Partners, and then the work that all of our communities working on in their professional learning communities. And then just aligning that together, making sure that there's a through line, that the work is not happening in silos. And I will just be fully transparent and acknowledge that we're still working on that. This is something that we're working on bringing together. So it's a very imperfect place that we are, and we really also are committed to getting there. And then really centering on what our scholars need. Like this isn't necessarily what, this is hard. And so engaging in this hard work, because we know that that's what our scholars need. I hear it from them tonight. I hear it from them multiple times. I have the opportunity to sit in spaces where our scholars come and speak, and they've spoken about that tonight. And I'm so proud of your leadership and know that we need to get more of that. And so going here to the next is really looking at scholar voice. In this, I also just want to acknowledge this is one snapshot, voices from scholars from one meeting. It is not reflective of our community as a whole. And so I just want to call that out and name it, that this is just one space where we have an opportunity to hear scholar voice. And we know that we need to do more and what that looks like. But what they're telling us, and what I heard also tonight, is that safety, trust, belonging, inclusion. I want to know more. I want to know what's going on. I want to be communicated with. Where is this going? You guys say things. Now what happens? Like, so building that trust that we do what we're going to say, what we're going to do. And so like really thinking about those things. I hear that, and I really spend a lot of time thinking about that. And then looking at what does that look like for our plan as a whole.
So I wonder, what's the feedback loop? So, you heard that.
Mhm.
And I think what I heard from them is they want to hear, okay, so what are you doing?
Yeah.
So is there, I don't know, do they meet, once a?
They're supposed to get once a month, but we didn't meet last month, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you get?
Yeah,
an
yeah.
agenda to provide that?
Yeah, and I think an example of that is just the work we're doing as a leadership team with our director of human resources, our director of communications, and myself. We meet, and then director of communications works directly with the student advisory superintendent board. We also know and recognize that your voice is important and powerful, and it's not the only voice in our district.
Mhm.
And so also thinking about how are we going to gather that collectively, and we also know that communication is extremely important and we have a lot of opportunities to learn how to get better at it, in how we do that. And so that's definitely a work in progress. We don't have a real refined system for what that looks like. And so, that's where we are now, in that regard. All righty. The other side of this work is really the technical side, and looking at guidance documents for our leaders that guide this work, that is aligned with the legalities that we're responsible for, as well as aligned to who we are as a district. The work that we're currently in the midst of, and we were ambitious, we thought we could do it in a meeting or two, and we're still working through it, is really like aligning and calibrating on our definitions of what are we calling and naming a disciplinary action whether it results in an exclusion or not, what are we calling things? And just really being aligned there. And as an example that really highlighted this really important topic is we took one specific thing and said, what does this look like? And heard all of our leaders explain what it looks like, and then took a step back and said, okay, we all heard a huge continuum of different things that we see in classrooms, and we all called it one thing. And so really kind of bringing that work together is extremely important, and we are deep in that and not done. And probably it'll be an ongoing thing that we'll need to continue to reflect on. And then having really clear guidance so that we have alignment. I think that clear guidance and clear practices and procedures that outline this work is an anti-racist practice, so that we're calibrated and aligned on this work, so that we're not all doing things in a subjective way across the board. And so thinking about that. And then the other thing that we're doing that's new is data monitoring. Every single month, our leaders get a list of all of their actions that have happened in the last month. And so previously, it kind of at the end of the year, there was all these errors in the discipline reporting. And so rather than going at the end of the year and trying to clean it up, we're now doing it on a monthly cadence. And so that happens monthly with our school leaders. They get the emails, they work with our office managers, staff, and then our team here around like cleaning that up so that our reporting is accurate. And then really looking at training, like making sure that we are aligned and calibrated on procedural pieces so that we can do what's right and needed around the due process needs of that our scholars are entitled to, and that we're all aligned on that and know what that looks like. And then one thing that is coming, not yet done, is really the policy review of 3241. So those are some of like the technical pieces of this work to help operationalize the plan as a whole.
I appreciate you kind of laying even the at the beginning before you started, right? Just this recognition that it's ongoing and that we have to move at the pace of really move at the pace of change, right? Which takes time. Just kind of one thought I want to throw out there around kind of how we talk about bias in discipline. Our brains are wired for bias, right? So eliminating bias or being unbiased is not a realistic aim. And so I wonder if instead we talk about it as being aware of the biases that we hold to disrupt the negative behaviors that come as a result of it, or some version of that. I just want to be mindful, particularly, for folks that maybe aren't as comfortable reflecting on their own biases, right? To just normalize this idea that biases are just a part of how our brain functions, and it benefits us in a lot of ways, and it also causes harm in these ways. So just to think about. I saw that in here a few times, unbiased or eliminating bias, and I just don't think that's a fair. I think that's anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And yes, that is something that, yes.
I think a big step towards that is the awareness, and that's one thing I'll say, one of the things I'm gonna talk about is really the shift in getting to be with y'all for 6 years and really feeling a move in this year, like it feels different. And whereas people were not comfortable talking about bias and not naming that we have it and it has an impact, but really being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And talking about it. And I feel like that's really evident. So that's a piece to me of evidence of change, and we're not gonna get rid of it, but we can have an awareness about it and want to be conscious of our actions.
Yes. So given that, the 6 years that you're talking about, you just want to highlight the partnership with Belong Partners. And I think the fact that Belong Partners has been with Tukwila for 6 years is really the consistency and the strength that comes from that, and that partnership is important. And so I just wanted to highlight that, and I'm excited about this partnership, because the opportunity to plan together and then reflect together on how things went is really been a great partnership opportunity. So I'm gonna pass it over to Stacy now.
I think we got some momentum. So yeah, so I was gonna kick it off with a 6-year journey, really, and I think over those 6 years, you've had a lot of transition in Tukwila, and we got to be on the journey with that. And so I think through that, we've got an understanding of sort of the climate and the context and relationships. And we know that this work is relationship based. If we're gonna do transformational work, it can't be because someone told you to, or someone from the outside said you stop. So it really needs to be in relationship over time, and I think that's why we stay in this work with Tukwila, even though we have a smaller contract this year, but we're still really present here, because we believe in this community. And I've been saying for years, we're in some really big places, and one of the things I love about Tukwila is you have nice schools. And there's so much potential to have alignment and to see growth and to get kids to grow up in this amazing community and have aligned practices with adults that create better experiences for you. So I'm excited to be here tonight to share with y'all, and you get to see the stuff that you see a lot, which is Belong Partners, and I'm not gonna spend a long time talking, this one has like 3 clips. But just to say, you know, you've been with us before, you've seen these slides before, but I always put them every time I come, you can click 2 more times. We're working in alignment with what you all want. We want a place where everyone thrives because they know they belong and matter, and the way to do that is by partnering with schools and community organizations and families to change the way we teach parent and care for youth. And we don't do it by just talking at people, we do it by experience and creating that mindset shift and that practice shift, because we do it in support, and because I have an experience in my body that allows me to show up in a different way with young people. So that is what we do, and we are always rooted in the values, so we try and walk that talk whenever we're in a space. So focusing on relationships, I think courage aligns really well with your district vision. You know, we're gonna lead from our heart, but we are not afraid to challenge the status quo. I think in the world that we're living right now, it's really a moment to say, what does that mean to step up and name your values and really working towards that liberation. And then I like to always bring this back in to say that our work is unique. It's we work with an outside evaluators, like, don't call yourself a program, call yourself an approach. You are an approach that is really unique because we integrate social, emotional learning, restorative practices, and discipline. All those things together make this work special. And one of the things that we know is that our goal is to grow successful members of our future community. And as we want to grow those future adults, they need a rigorous academic program, which we heard the young people say, we want to be sure it's rigorous. And that means, you know, K-12, everyone wants to be engaged in really rigorous academic learning. And we know that they also need explicit teaching and practicing in social, emotional learning and regulation. And even if you're a high school teacher, we still got to teach and practice those things. And then we know that data really helps inform that. So we get good, oftentimes in schools, looking at academic data, what are the interventions needed, and we have some ideas around it. We really believe we have to get that discipline data for that same reason, not through a lens of deficit, but really through a lens of what are the lagging skills and how are we the place to grow up. That's okay. Keep on going. And then I brought this because I had this idea, I was going to do an experience with you all, and then they said, that's what you do when you come to a work session. So I'm not at a work session, but I'm planting a seed to get invited to a work session next year. Really, because as we think about.
They asked me, I'm gonna lay.
Next time, this is the seed plant for it, get excited. And the idea is we're not punitive or restorative. We are moving towards restorative practice, and I invite you to just look at those words up there and think about your own personal life, your own experience in Tukwila, and think about where are we moving towards, where are we more, and you know, when I get invited back, we're gonna do an activity where you get to dig in and experience and share about it. But I just wanted to bring that in because I think, and it is the work we're doing with your schools, is the things that we're talking with educators about, we're talking with leadership teams, we're talking about Hope Team with this stuff. And so I want to bring it for all of you to see. All right, so this is the work that we are doing with Tukwila this year around, you have to click again. There we go.
4 times, yeah.
4 times, there we go. I don't know, I should figure out how to.
Go down to restore.
Yeah, there we go. So there's 4 different kind of big buckets of work that we're doing. Lots of work on professional development and coaching that is directly with the school. And it is often out of work that's with their PBIS team, their Hope team, that is sort of driving what that professional development looks like. We're looking at data, working with them to look at data. We're also working with the huge celebration that y'all have, Skyward and Swiss communicating, and every school has it and they can look at data. And so that's the data that you're seeing tonight is the Swiss data, which is much more user-friendly. So Skyward is a state reporting requirement, and it's really hard to pull and accurately come up with patterns and say, what can we do about it? And Swiss takes that. So they're not having to double entry. They put it into Skyward and it magically pops into Swiss so they can see it and see what's happening and what they can do about it. And then obviously social emotional learning practices that teachers can use and implement. We are still supporting them with the teachers who are still using the ruler that they are used to doing, and then we bring our other own things in as well. And then we're working a lot this year. There's been a lean into restorative discipline. What is that going to look like? What does it sound like? What are the tools that the teachers can use? Because sometimes we want something magic to happen in the office, but the truth is, restorative practice is effective. It needs to happen when we re-enter. So we're doing a lot of work with that as well. So I'm not going to read you all that, but those are just some of the examples of things that we're doing and that people have accessed over time. One of the exciting things I'll just call out, and I'm going to talk to it a little bit, but our work with the school leaders. I think when we met with them in August, it was like, how do we get aligned? How do we really dig into what the behaviors are? And I would say we're pretty close to definitions of behaviors, but what we're coming up with now is anchor behaviors for each one. What does it look like in elementary in Tukwila? What does it look like in secondary for Tukwila? So that then they can roll, and then how do they do a similar process we've done to roll it out with their staff? Because just if the school leaders and the admin understand it, doesn't mean that the people who are every day know how to do it. Yeah, and yeah, so how do we communicate that and be aligned? And also what we know to be true is just because you say it once, it isn't done. So it's an ongoing process. And then the other thing that I highlight your district a lot because your referral form, the form that educators write when students were removed from learning their community, has a whole side that is on what is the prevention. What are the interventions you tried before? And you're the only district I've ever seen who actually says every time you fill something out, tell us what you've done before. Now, it doesn't always happen that we're doing that, but we're really leaning into you have this resource, not because we're trying to say what's wrong with the kid, but really so we say what's working and what's not working. And so that's a highlight the strength. And so we've been really talking about that with the leadership team.
Thank you.
Yeah, so district-wide definitions, the data link is working, which is great. We talked about that. And then we are working on all the people who are doing the data entry, having the skill to be able to do that and getting our leaders out. Some leaders are still doing the data entry, and how do we get that handled by someone else so that they can really do the restorative work with young people, and someone else is taking care of consistent data entry. And then we have 2 schools that are working with us to really look at their discipline data using our data team structure. And many of the schools have been sharing disproportionality data that we're going to look at tonight in their schools and looking at that regularly, which I think has made the way where people are, okay to say, this is happening and I can take some responsibility. What can I do different? Which is a shift.
So really thinking about like all of this coming together, the work that is happening with the Long Partners, the work that we're doing with our leaders and all of that is really looking at where we're at now. So we're going to look at a snapshot in time of where we're at for exclusionary practices in relation to enforcing anti-bias discipline and thinking about that. And so the data that we'll look at is really out of Swiss, and then thinking about where the supports are, and the green bar is the percentage of the racial group within the school's total population. The blue bar is the percentage of referrals for that racial group, and then if they're the same, then they're not disproportionate. But if there's a variance there, then that shows disproportionality in that. And then if you look at the bottom number, that just shows the total number for that racial group. So this is where Cascade View is at from the start of this school year to now. And the reason that we're showing this data is because this is what's called out in our strategic plan. And so that's why this snapshot was selected. So this is where Cascade View is at.
Can I add something on it in
Yeah.
general? So just in general, oh my goodness, that's disproportionate discipline, and that means that Black students are receiving a significantly higher percentage. That be like, that's not what we want to see. And it's not a Tukwila school district problem. This is a systemic society situation, and we can't change that until we do our work. So this is a step in doing the work. And the other thing to know is that exclusionary discipline is down by about 50% from September to March last year to September to March this year, and the gap is closed. So we didn't pull all those graphs to show you, but just to know that yes, there's still discipline happening and the exclusions are cut in about half from where they were this time last year for all the schools.
So in the slide before, you said the bottom number, that those little numbers down at the bottom,
Mhm.
0.44, indicates the total number of referrals.
Exclusionary, so those are
Yeah, that's-
referrals.
I got it.
that- Yeah, so the,
We use referrals meaning, identifying some behavior. Discipline is actually sub-exclusionary.
not always, so sometimes there are referrals, we pull just the ones that resulted in exclusion. So sometimes there's a referral and
Yeah.
something happens
Yeah.
predominant, but
Yeah.
what we pulled here is the ones where kids are actually either in detention, in school suspension, out of school suspension. So that's the ones that are called out in this graph. So the cool thing about it is we can kind of filter down, and since your strategic plan was around reducing exclusionary discipline and exclusion, disproportionate discipline, exclusionary, so those are just exclusionary.
Which, could we just call those then the students that receive discipline?
Exclusionary.
Exclusionary, yeah.
So are you saying you think of discipline as only when they're suspended or?
Well, what
Detention.
I've heard, the term, if you put exclusionary discipline versus referrals.
Yes, referral is a broader.
Two
Yeah.
different things, so what those numbers at the bottom are exclusionary discipline, they're
Yes.
not referrals.
Well, but they are referrals, because
Well,
It's both.
referrals are so much more.
There's,
It's-
right.
It's a
yes.
referral that's
Yeah.
resulting in an exclusionary action. So from that regard, and then thinking
Okay.
about like where this is at, is like the referral doesn't, if there's a referral, it doesn't always mean, and where we want to get is that the student isn't excluded.
Right.
This is just showing what we've identified in our strategic plan about what we want to highlight.
Could you just take the black two columns and tell me, is it like almost 45% of the students are with referrals?
No,
And
no.
what is that
So
bar
those,
chart
yeah,
mean?
so the green bar says that about 30% of the students identify as black.
Okay.
And they are about 45% of the referrals of the total, which is 4
Got it.
referrals.
Okay, and it's underneath when you say you're 45% of the referrals, it's
Four
four
referrals,
Mhm.
of 4, yes,
four people,
yeah,
not 45%.
correct, no.
Four people.
4 people represent, yes.
And that represents.
Yes,
45%.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask a favor?
Yes.
Can you explain to this group what is exclusion, because not all exclusions, like we're talking about exclusions from the classroom. Can you just define for this group what this exclusion and referrals means in terms of, for example, for a fourth grader, for example, does that mean half the day, 1 hour? What does that mean to the board understanding? Does that mean, does that mean an official suspension, an in-house suspension? Just giving
Yes.
a sense of what that is.
Yes, great question. And so there is sort of state law around that right now, and so we have to document, if they're excluded, not in a problem-solving process or working on something, but if they're removed in a way that says you messed up and you're paying for it, right? For more than 30 minutes, that counts as an exclusion
From their learning.
from their learning environment. Now, if they're in the office planning with the counselor or the social worker making a repair plan, that doesn't count. But if they're just sitting there because they were wrong, that counts as exclusion at 30 minutes. What we did for pulling this, for the purposes of this, when we think about exclusion, it is, did I suspend them for half a day, for a whole day, for a week? We're thinking about, did I give them detention? So did they miss lunch? Did they miss recess? Like those are the pieces that we think of as excluding them from their learning environment or the community. And not just to solve the problem and get back in, but really, we decided that based on the behavior that happened and how we plan to build your skills, you needed a break. You needed to be out of the classroom or out of the community for a while. So those are.
I wanted that really shared broadly because I still think people just think of it as a suspension or a
Mhm.
suspension. But what we're really talking about, because this goes hand in hand with like thinking about chronic absenteeism or students from the classroom or engagement, when we think about rigor, right? They have to be in their seats,
Yep.
right? So that's why it's a goal. And kudos to the schools for reducing that by 50%.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
huge,
is all
which is huge.
levels. It's the
And we have
classroom
work to do,
teacher,
but that,
the
the
admin,
schools
it's
should be committed for that part too.
Right.
So it's yes and, right?
Yeah,
Both
and that's-
realities are true. They've done a good job reducing the total number of exclusions from the classroom, and we still have disproportionate discipline that we have to work on, so we made
Yeah.
both.
And it's a
both things.
small number and it's
Yeah.
still something to work
But I
on.
wanted to define
No,
that,
thank you
for
for
the-
asking.
especially because I think
for elementary.
Mhm.
You know, people understand that at the high school and middle school level, because it's just, we do, but people really didn't understand what does that look like at the elementary level. And I think it's important that people understand, like, it's as small as like, if you set them out for 30 minutes in another classroom to do work or something, that is called an exclusion.
Yeah.
Right, and that just letting people know what the definition is, and that's how we have to count it.
So is this data this year through March?
Yes,
No, yeah, this is,
Yeah.
this school year. This
from
is
the
just this
beginning of the school year till March, yes.
Okay, so it's partial use.
Yeah.
Can you just help me, because I'm still struggling here? So if I look at your Asian column, right? And so then the green bar is the racial group, so they make up 29% and they have no referrals?
Yes,
Okay,
no exclusionary referrals.
oh man, so what's
So that means,
what's
you know-
the 4 at the bottom, 0 at the bottom?
Zero means they have zero referrals.
Okay, where's the
No.
blue, yeah, where's the blue bar for 8? So I guess this is where I need help, so talk me through it. Go to the next column of Black students.
Uh-huh.
So just spell it out for me. What's the green represent?
The green says that they are about 20% of the population.
Great,
They are about 45% of the 4 referrals that were,
say that one more time.
of the 4 exclusions. 45% of them were for students who identified as Black.
So 4 referrals that led to that, which makes up 40, I think that's where I'm getting confused, because, so I'm not looking at 45% of the referrals. I'm looking at
No.
just this number 4
Yes,
at the bottom.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so it is confusing, and when we look at disproportionality, the way to look at it is based on the percent of the population and then the percent of the referrals, and that sort of allows us to say, you could say, well, I have a school that has a high percentage of students who identify as Black. So that means of course, that would make sense that we would have, no, it should still be in parity, right? So we look at percentages, that's a way to look at it across, and to know, yeah, we're still only looking at 4 referrals.
Mhm.
So it's not a tremendous number of exclusions between September and March.
Mhm. And I just want to share, these are good questions, because this is the first time that we're looking at Swiss data in this way, in a presentation for the board. Usually we're looking at information pulled from Skyward, shown in a different way. So I think that this is also helping, like, when we look at future things, like how we label things in the graphs will help it better understand.
And it takes time, when we work with this with teachers and they're looking at like wrestling with what does this mean? And again, I would say it's 4 and it's a representation, and it's a tool for a conversation. And so, happy to have another offline conversation with you to walk through this, but the idea is we wanted to be able to let you see it.
So, and I understand this right, September through March, they have only had 5 total, or 9 total referrals of someone having to be taken out.
Yes.
Excluded.
That's
Yes.
really, that's really good.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, that's the
So
thing.
celebrating like that
Yeah.
piece there and
Okay.
naming that,
And
and
you had 4 who were Black kids and 4
yes,
Latinos.
so also naming
Yes.
this and.
So even when it's low, it's
Mhm.
disproportionate.
Yes,
It's
that's-
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's still a consistent.
Absolutely,
So
yes,
It's still.
yes.
I'm kind of spinning ahead. I went up to Tequila, on the whole year, you got 1 student at half speed and half there.
Right,
So is that the goal?
You went ahead.
I did, I figured you could spare the speed very quickly, right?
well, and so
And go, okay, but if you go up to Showalter, I've got 21,
Right.
so.
So our
And
goal
I know you're
is,
looking at the demographics, so I'm kind of going,
yeah,
what's going on in general that's getting them
yeah.
into that kind of trouble.
Our goal is not to compare schools against each other. That's not the purpose of this right now, because we're everybody's in different places and spaces. And so the goal of this is really to highlight, yes, we have reduced exclusions overall. And yes, we are still disproportionate. And so really that work that that of the other pieces that we really need to focus on around our professional development, around our restorative practices, around like those spaces around that. So the goal here is really to just look at a snapshot in time of where we are at, and what you'll see in a minute is a slide that shares that, yes, we're happy about that reduction, and we also fully recognize we have a significant amount of work to do around our truly anti-racist disciplinary actions. And where that starts is in the classroom, it starts in the hallways, it starts in the lunchroom, it starts out on the playground, or, you know, and the commons at Foster. So like our goal here is not to compare schools with each other, because we don't want to do that. We want to learn from each other. We also want to bring all of our, like, especially within our leadership team, like having conversations where where it feels safe to talk about your own struggles of what is happening in your building, in a way to not feel like, oh, I have more than you, or you have more than me, kind of a thing. And so looking at it from a perspective of like, this is where we're at and what we learn, like, what does our focus need to be?
While I agree with your approach, I can't help but look at Tequila and say, well, say for one student, which sadly is an African American, I'm still standing here kind of going, they're one away from no issues.
Well, this is just that resulted in exclusion. So if you were to look at the whole picture of how many referrals or discipline situations have happened in Tukwila, there would be many. What we
Okay.
just pulled out is what resulted in
The extreme.
the removal of plain or new community. So that's the other piece. We're not, you know, and the schools look at all of those things. But each school has its own sort of culture, and I work in lots of different districts, so like everyone has their own school culture and way they do things. And it's really about how does that school learn where they're at, refine their practices, and look for growth there. So we just chose exclusionary because that's what.
And if you recall last year, just compared to last year, when we only reported referrals, remember, it was Tequila was the outlier.
And you would still see that if you looked at everything, they have a lot of.
So what they
discipline
think,
situations
yeah,
that does not.
but in terms of exclusion, and I think that's why the context, right, the school, the community, all of those pieces. But I think the most important part here is to know that the school leaders and the school teams are making goals on reducing exclusionary
Everyone has had that goal and they're doing.
and working on to make sure that students are in their seats in the classrooms, which I think is important to recognize. And we have a disproportionality problem still, right? So that's the other yes and we have to continue to address that, right?
The other issue that it's a little dangerous, because especially when you have small numbers like here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gender could be an issue,
Yeah.
special education could be an issue, when you
Yes.
just focus on
And-
just race.
Yes,
That may not be the whole picture,
Yes.
it may be, it may
Yeah.
not be.
So,
and, yeah,
yes, and this is an example where we're trying to minimize the amount of data that we're asking the team to give to us, right? So we're trusting that they're at the school level looking at those different intersectionalities because we've asked them to, right? But our strategic plan highlights a goal around exclusionary practices. And so the data that we get in reports is going to be focused on the strategic plan and our goals towards meeting that strategic plan outcomes. So it's not that those things don't matter. I just think we can sometimes get at the board level, try to get too in the weeds and not trust the team that they're doing some of that work.
Yeah, but I just need to be assured that that
Yes.
work is going on.
and the cool thing about Switch is it can look by special ed, it can look by language, it can look by.
So by doing
Gender,
this,
all
are you kind of saying to us that in this particular case with these four students, this is a racial issue primarily? I don't think so.
No, not sitting
No,
here right now.
obviously.
And so, and also just to kind of highlight, like, one, again, like, this is related to what's called out specifically in the strategic plans. That's what we're
Yeah,
putting forth today.
Yeah.
And,
right.
one of the pieces that I want to share, that I didn't share before, that is being done, it's more to speak, that there's a lot happening behind the scenes that isn't named here. And so one of the things that we also have to do is that this is exceptionally important. And so there's a lot of different factors that come to play, and we are a small but mighty team. And one of the things that we're doing is really looking at what is the data that school teams are looking at collectively. So thinking about the data that we're presenting to each of the race and equity teams that is like similar data so that we can all have a conversation about the similar things. And so that piece there is still a work in progress, and with full disclosure and transparency, that's still a work in progress. And it's something that is being done where teams, we're looking at the data that every school will get consistent data looking at specific things. And the other piece is it really also learning as a team how to truly dive into SWIS itself, because there's a significant amount of data in there that can tell us a lot. And our team needs to know how to do it.
I'm just saying,
And
you're almost violating, I mean, n less than 10. I'm just saying, when you get these tiny numbers,
Yeah,
you gotta be really careful.
and we're also careful to say it isn't because of race. That's not what this graph shows.
Right.
This graph just shows that students who identify as Black are overrepresented. It doesn't mean that what they did was anything like that. And so that's a really important thing whenever we're looking at data around disproportionality. It's not because you are a Black student, but the truth is, this is not unlike what is happening in schools across the country and across Washington State. Like the youth who are overrepresented in exclusions from school tend to be Black and brown. So we need to notice that and try and disrupt that. I think that's the work that you're all doing. So we're not trying to say it because of that, but we just need to name it.
But
And you're right, the numbers are strong.
probably shouldn't be doing these numbers unless, I mean, the state is less than 10. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
honestly, I'd like to see both sets of data, both the exclusionary referrals and then the total number of referrals. Because I think there's a lot of very useful information that can be seen by, the racial discrepancies in total number of referrals and not just exclusionary actions taken on those referrals. Because, if you take any sort of, sociology class, you'll see that you can't make a actual representative portion of the population with like 2 people. You can't see any actual trends when, if you look at Tukwila, before I saw the numbers at the bottom, I was like, 100% of referrals were Black students?
Yeah.
That's insanity. But then you see it's just one person. So I would like to see both sets of data to see, actual trends.
We do get to see all those sets of data. This report is focused on exclusionary practices.
Okay.
So that big data report, we will still get that, right? I think.
Yeah, and just to name that also, like this is an added presentation to the annual presentation that shows the whole overview of the year. So this is a mid-year report on what happens overall as a district overall. And so this is our second time discussing this with the board in this way. And so this is just a midpoint reflection. It's not intended to be a full overview of where we're at from a data perspective.
I agree with Aiden, the not, a more useful graph might be the non-exclusionary referrals, because those are kind of predictive. I mean, if you have a bunch of non-exclusionary, that could lead to an exclusionary if you are watching it.
Just for you to have confidence that that's what the schools are doing.
Okay.
So that is the work that
Okay,
they're
yeah,
responsible
yeah,
for.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we chose to bring to you all this, and I agree with you, the numbers are really small, which is good that they're really small.
Yeah.
And we wanted to bring a piece, but
Yeah.
that is the work that they're doing all the time, because they're
Okay.
not really paying attention to just exclusions. They're
Yeah.
looking at what are the patterns in our school through the lens of not what's wrong with kids or what's bad, but really
Right.
what are the lagging skills for adults or kids, and how are we the place to build them? And so
Right.
that's the lens through which they look at their data, and they are paying attention to
Okay.
the bigger pattern. And all the way across all the schools, it's down in general this year, for all the things, but particularly exclusion.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great thing to celebrate, seeing the total number of referrals and then you see how few of them actually ended in, exclusionary practices. That's a great, celebration.
So we have
Yeah.
seen all of that
Yeah.
data in the work sessions from the school improvement plan.
Yes.
They brought it to us. So
Yes.
we're seeing this data. So I think we need to get more comfortable as a board with these little snippets of data that tell this larger story. Yeah, so yes, and we also have the opportunity to adjust our strategic plan, right? If we want to shift our goals because we want to really lean into different benchmarks, great, let's do that. Let's shift our strategic plan. And then the data and reports that we get will reflect that. Otherwise, we're just asking more and more and more and more and more of this amazing team, right? And it's honestly, quite frankly, probably pretty hard for them to keep up. So we're trying to streamline this a little bit so that we still get the information we need to make decisions as best we can. And also, again, trust. I'm trying to lean into trust that the team is doing what they need to do. So again, want to reiterate, we have gotten that information in every single school SIP plan that we've seen. We've seen it. They have specific goals around it, so we'll see it again. It's just not here because this is focused on their strategic plan goal.
And I totally agree with you on that. And if we go down, because I skipped ahead.
Let's all.
I mean,
So then what I'm missing here. And following with that logic that I agree with is when it says our goal, this is a mid-year snapshot. Our goal is to go down by 5%. Where's my beginning bar and where are we now?
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So I think if I had that, it might have saved us this conversation, you know, versus, you know, what we're saying.
Yes, I hear that, yeah. And, if you wanna go ahead and, so just to highlight, yes, thank you, I hear that and I agree. That could have helped a lot. But I do wanna just like kind of just go through, just visually where, the different schools are at. We spend a lot of time focused on, the amazing work that Dr. Fremstad and her team is doing at Cascade View. And also looking forward at where we are at. And so here's where Tukwila is at, and then it will go to Showalter, and then it will go to Foster. And so really culminating in the fact that like really we know, we hear, we know all of this. And so like really at the next place and we know that overall, we have reduced exclusionary practices. We also know that we must, and it is not a maybe, we must continue to address the disproportionate impact on our Hispanic, Latino, Black, and African American scholars. Like, we must do that. That is essential, critical work. And what the graphs didn't tell us all the things that we wanted to know. But what it did tell us is that is significant, the discrepancy of where we're at. We're still disproportionate. And while it is not just a Tukwila School District challenge, it is a Washington State challenge, it is a nation challenge. And I really am excited to work in a place in a district that we all are collectively agreeing that this is not okay. We're naming that it's not okay, and we have a plan around what we're gonna do about it and look at that collectively. And so just thinking about what that is and what that looks like.
And I'll just add something just really quickly. This was feedback, this presentation was based on feedback from last year. Where the strategic plan was based on feedback from last year. And so just letting people know that, yes, there's more to data, right? There's referrals. I mean, there's referrals, there's exclusions, but then there's the suspension, like, if there's more, and we know there's a bigger story. But we decided, it was clear that people were concerned about, you know, kids getting their education, being in front of teachers, exclusion. That is why we made that as a goal. And so we decided that we were gonna focus in that area. We took a targeted approach. And what we are learning today, this is our mid-year review, because I was also asked to bring data in the middle of the year. What we learned today is it's working. It's mostly working.
And we also are learning that we still, granted the N size is small, but I want to challenge us for a second. If you are a student in a classroom and you are continually seeing a group of students being sent out of that classroom repeatedly, we are perpetuating stereotypes about that student. And I want to state that really clearly. So this matters to talk about that, because it's not even about what we see in the data. It's about that little third grader in the classroom seeing the same group of students, whether it's a child with a disability, whether it's a group of students, Black students, Latino students, whether it's just boys. Whatever it is in a classroom, those students are being told every day when that exclusion is happening, who gets to be in class learning and who does not. And I want to center that experience from those children, and I don't want to perpetuate those stereotypes around any kids and our students. All students have bad days. All adults have bad days, right? But who gets the excuses to stay in the classroom? And who gets permission to have a bad day versus who does not? That's what we're talking about.
Good, it reinforces somebody doesn't belong.
It reinforces somebody doesn't belong, which is what we're trying to say is that's not true. So that means we have work to do, right? And I just want to say that, I just want to put it at the ground level, the kid level, because I always think about that, like who's being excluded, what is, like, I didn't think of my own child, like, so I had a son that was excluded, I had a daughter that wasn't, and I think about those messages that they received every day when certain things were happening. I know this, I was a principal coach, I remember sitting, and this is not even here, when I was in a high school. And I remember there was these two girls in front of me who were incessantly talking. I'm sorry I'm passionate about this, but this makes me crazy, but incessantly talking, and the teacher did nothing the whole time. I counted it, 20 minutes. 20 minutes, and then a child who I knew was coming in, he was positioned in the front, and all of a sudden the teacher was whoop on that kid. He hadn't even sat down, he didn't even take off his coat. And I kept thinking, what is going on here? Like, it was just, I think we have to talk about that. How are boys being treated? How are Black youth being treated? How are Latino youth being treated? And I just think there's things we can do, but if we think about what the stereotype we're trying to unpack, to mitigate, to interrupt those biases, it starts when they're babies, you guys, it starts when they're in kindergarten. So we have work to do. But I also say we're making progress. So I want to say that both are true. And we have to continue to do that. But if we can center that, like what we're perpetuating in our classrooms, let's center that instead of just focusing on some of these pieces.
The data is just an indicator, and the other piece is how do we know that every time this behavior is gonna happen, referrals are going to happen? How is every time that happens an opportunity for a kid to have a restorative conversation, to repair harm and to re-enter community and to be stronger and have a plan for stability? That's the work. So you would never have a school, you're not where stuff isn't happening. It's supposed to happen. We're humans in community, stuff is gonna happen, we're gonna have clear expectations, we're gonna follow through. How does every time a young person get an opportunity to actually strengthen their connection to school and see themselves as belonging? And that's the restorative piece that we're working with leaders and social workers to continue.
Thank you for letting me have my little.
Thanks for sharing.
Kind of like point of reference for the board. So it was requested that Dr. Pedroza create a document that tracks strategic goal progress. That was sent to us as a part of our superintendent review process. I'm saying that for two reasons. One, can you send us a link to the live version of that so that we can go to it if we want to see the updates? And then we need to use the tools that we've asked the superintendent to create instead of, again, asking for that data all of the time, right? So there's a tool now. If it needs to improve, let's work with Dr. Pedroza on improving it. So we're getting in real time the updates and the progress report, so that again, then we don't have to be bogged down in spending 20 additional minutes talking about a data set that was presented to the report. So that's an ask leaning into our board values, right? That we again rely on the tools that have been created for us upon our request Otherwise, that's really disrespectful of Dr. Pedrosa and the team's time. So I want to make sure we're honoring that as well.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have one more question, you know, talking about respective time, my bad. I want to know what exactly were counted as exclusionary practices for Foster? Because how are like the tensions
Okay.
counted? Because just the other day, I saw a staff member yelling at late students that they were gonna send them to detention if they saw them be late again. So, and I know it's more than 5 people, so I want to know how that's being counted. Is,
So-
after school detention counted as an exclusionary act, or is it?
It is not, because it is not removing a scholar from their learning environment. So if it's after school, it is it is consequence that is not an exclusion from class.
Thank you, I just
Yeah.
wanted that clarified. Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Good question.
Thank you. The learning curve for all of us, and we're gonna keep leaning in. Thanks, everybody. All right. It is 8:36. Still a long way to go. All right, so we're now to our questions only presentations, starting with the WSIF report for the 24-25 school year. What additional questions do folks have?
So I guess, so this was presented as, current data, actually talked to the SBI, the data is gonna be updated tomorrow.
One day.
So the question is, why are we looking at last year's data when we're gonna get to next year's data tomorrow?
Okay, Scott Wick, Chief of Academics in Schools, he, him pronouns. I think this is more presented now because it was on the board agenda to present.
So then we need to change the board agenda because I think they heard most, it's like OSBI and they present this data every year in March.
Yeah, then it could just go to April. Yeah,
Yeah,
certainly. Because it does cause quite a lag, like you're noticing, I think we all noticed it. And I wondered too, I thought, well, the most recent data is spring 23, how can it be? Because for whatever the reasons, their data isn't freshly scrubbed and considered final, it's a year of the delay. So until the 24 data is made presented final, which now we find out is tomorrow, then 24 becomes the most recent. As of now, 23 is the most recent, which seems like a huge delay of data. It is a huge delay. So yeah, I think you solved it. Just moving this back will give us the time to have only a 1 year delay, not a 2 year delay.
So my question, then do we want to just suspend this presentation and then move it to next month and then update the scraps?
I would move to postpone this presentation to 1 month.
also given what time it is, yes.
Okay,
That's a motion on the floor.
so somebody has to second.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Scott, I wish we'd have did this, before you were sitting here for 2.5 hours. I
he
just
still,
want-
he still has to
I
say.
agree. I want to honor that you were prepared and they waited 2.5, we waited 2.5 hours to tell you next month.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Much respect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just jokingly saying, he will go. He's fine.
Yeah, bye.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
That was the best presentation I've done in a long
I would
time.
say that you have the template ready to go. I mean, you have the template, you just gotta update the date.
Right.
Yeah, so their work is mostly done. Yeah, sorry, Scott.
Financial.
So we have the record show that it can continue until April.
Good show.
Yeah, great. Okay.
We need to postpone the
Great.
next month. So I'm fine.
Remember
All
being.
right. Finance. Monthly financial state report and financial forecast. So additional questions you folks have.
I'm curious about, you said the district has applied for the small rural school modernization to update the PACT.
Yeah, so there
Are we
was
a small rural? I didn't think we were a small rural district.
Amy Fleming, CFO, it never hurts to try to apply for grants. So we did apply for that in the hopes that we will receive some funding. So we should know mid-May,
Okay,
whether we do get to receive any funding.
okay.
You know, never hurts to apply. All we can do is think the worst case is no. So we'll see what happens.
So I was curious, Aiden, you said there's a new lighting board up in the control center.
Yeah,
Did we spend, I didn't know that money was spent on the lighting system.
Did that last year.
Yeah, we did some,
I mean, you did the sound system.
we did a sound system, we didn't do the lighting system, out of bond money, so maybe it was purchased by, somebody
I'm
else.
not sure.
But, we did.
I just know we have it.
Yeah, we have upgraded through the bond money before we.
Yeah,
Postponed it, we did purchase that one, we purchased the material on our installation, and when we received it, then, the director of the path installed it for us. So.
Oh, okay, so you
Yeah,
bought it before
I'll
the
get to
installation.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious about the process for deciding what to buy for the pack and what what sound system put in, what lighting system put in, what, eventually we get to the stage work. Who's consulting on how to do
I
that?
can give you that information. We did have a group of the architect and the architect BCE engineers was doing the anything to do with lighting HVAC system. We had a contractor for the all the stage information. The boards so we had all that, a group of people that were consulting the school district to move the project. So
Did you-
all that information, and then we were looking at that moment for reducing any cost, trying to reduce costs. So some of the products that we purchased were owner purchase, and then we install it later. So just to reduce the cost, and then we stopped right there when we had that bids, and we went out for bid, 2020, December 23.
Yeah.
I believe so. And then that's when we stopped, when we got that number. So the whole package was already done. And I can send you all the architects, the contractors that were involved in the decision making.
I'm just curious, did we get the input from like the drama teacher and the folks that are actually using the facility?
Mhm.
Did they get their chance for input?
They did, they were consulted to as well. The executive director, which he's the director of.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Was already
Yeah.
consulted, we had engineers involved and.
Okay,
I can send you a list of all the participants in that.
okay, thanks.
Director Cardenas, can you just say who you are for the record?
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
that's okay, I'm not, this will make sure.
I am Liliana Cardenas, Director of Maintenance and Operations.
Thank you, yes.
So just a quick question, when you say headcount does not include ALE or full-time ready to start, does that hurt or help us?
It's just not included in this report, so, the running start is in the overall picture of, total enrollment, that we receive. The running start component is kind of an in and out for us for the most part, so, the funding that we receive for running start students pretty much goes out to the community colleges where they're attending, so we are billed,
Agreed, so I'm just wondering, so when it says it doesn't include that, does that mean that you're not taking into account that money from this will be sent out? Or is it already accounted for that money is following the student to?
it's
Running
all for the
Start?
students.
It's already accounted for.
Correct, yes.
I think that was it.
I'm also curious about the invested money that's supposed to be, seems like we very rarely use it, but students, I mean, it's supposed to be for student needs.
Mhm.
if it's not being, can we figure out a way to
Yeah, so
start
they
using
they
it?
usually use it during, towards the end of the school year, so they pay for like prom tickets and
Yeah.
senior graduation,
Oh, okay.
especially in the high school senior graduation.
Okay,
You know, if there's certain other fees that they have to pay, I know that Showalter's used it to buy, clothing for students in need.
Right.
And that's what that money is designed for.
right,
So that is part of that purpose. I do want to note that page that you're referring to, the private purpose trust fund page, we've had audit recommendations for the last 2 years. We'll have another one for this fiscal year ending. According to the accounting standards, we're not allowed to report any of that information in the private purpose trust fund. So all of it will be moved to either the general fund or to the ASB fund. So the InvestEd will move over to ASB. And then the rest of those balances will be tracked almost like a grant. And I'll probably end up putting in the grant report.
yeah, that's what's
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
see it, and, okay. it'll be
Yeah, so
great
there will
report.
be a change coming. We're starting that process now to start
Okay.
moving those funds to the appropriate funds. So I'm just giving you the heads up that
Okay.
that will change here soon.
Here's the one other question I had was on the grants. Have you identified, so these grants are mostly money that comes from the state, pretty much. Some of that money is from the federal, the basic sources from the federal government, it's coming through the state. Can we kind of identify, I mean, the ones I'm worried about are the ones that are from the federal government that come through the state that are not Title I and IDEA. Can we keep track of those so that, because those are the ones that may be questionable?
Yeah, so we know that, or we're hearing, I shouldn't say we know for sure, but we are hearing that Title and Special Ed will stay, they'll probably end up over in Health and Human Services.
Right.
Is the latest that I heard.
Right,
The remaining grants on this list are questionable, anything that starts with an 84, so it says the CFDA column. Anything that's not title or special ed could potentially be on the chopping block for the Department of Education. Title II, Title IV, Title III, and Gear Up are the ones that I'm most concerned with at this point. We are actually in the last year of the Gear Up grant for Foster High School. So that funding is ending anyway.
okay,
But we did just receive an award that's not reflected on here because I just received it this month for Showalter. The question is, will that funding get cut or will that funding go, it's a 5-year grant. So will that continue for the next 5 years? And that's my big question. And because of the dollar amount, that's the one I'm probably the most concerned with, because it's about $270,000 a year
yeah,
for us, so.
okay.
Any additional questions?
it's good.
Thank you. Okay, next, was that questions on the financial forecast as well?
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, next is our asset preservation program. What additional questions do folks have here?
So I'm just curious about the drinking water, signs. You said they were taken down. I mean, were they paper or were they secured? The ones at the restrooms that said, don't drink this water?
Yeah, the signs that we installed, we actually did it a couple of times and then they were just destroying them. So.
Or were they, I mean, what kind of signs? Were they substantial signs or were they just?
No, there were, I have a picture, I can try to find it. So they were placed on the walls, with an acrylic color on it.
Yeah.
So, there were like 8 by 10.
Yeah.
Kind of size, and then there were just the root from the walls. So we tried to do it twice, and consulted with the principal there, so. The ones for the ladies' restrooms still have, that's my understanding, but the boys' restrooms are.
This may not be as big of an issue. I'm interested in the students' perspective on this. So since the Foster got remodeled, there's a lot of bottle fill faucets around so that you can fill up water. Do you aware of anybody who's filling up their drinking water with faucets in the restrooms?
Not, to the best of my knowledge, no. Hopefully not. I hope it's zero. You know, when I go into the back rooms, there's a lot of weird things happening. But I don't think one of them is them drinking out of the tap water.
Yeah.
I mean, what I heard before was that people were filling up their noodle cups with that.
I think it's good to
I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, I know.
So, but I don't think that I hope not. I hope that's not a big issue. To the best of my knowledge, that's not a giant issue.
We talked about this before too.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Just trying to recall that that's not, what I heard from the student group last time, that isn't a concern for them.
That's fine, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Well, then we don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, but I do have an on your last question about the lead,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
so I have received the final information today and there's no detectable lead on that tree we tested.
Okay. Good.
So I will send.
And I guess just for the students, I don't know if you picked that up, but there was testing of all the, the drinking ones at Foster and the lead was undetectable.
it's good. That's
So-
good.
Don't put your noodles in there, Steve. Don't take your food in the bag.
You know, now that you said that there's no lead, I feel more inclined to.
I'm back there with wire students in the.
Don't take your food in
Okay.
the bag. That's just a lifestyle.
There's other stuff going on.
Take that on.
Is there any questions on the acid report?
Thank you. It's getting late. We're on the
Yes,
weekend.
bro.
Any additional questions here?
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, next is our WSIPC report for policy 6570. What additional questions do folks have here?
I think you kind of covered, but the only thing was to make sure that, we've learned the lesson from whatever happened at Highline, so that we're protected against that, whatever that was, without going into all the details of it. I just want to make sure that everybody's learned how to prevent that particular kind of cyber attack as well as any other ones.
Aaron Gravano, HR Labor Relations Tech, he, him pronouns.
Xiang Yuko, IT Director. So I didn't expect the question about how that will come up. Usually when something like that happens, they won't tell you exactly what happened. But I think we are in pretty good shape because we have very secure network. We have tightened down quite a bit recently, in the last year or two, for anything outside access. And we also moved all the vendor access from outside to a totally separate network. So it's separate. So even if those got hacked, the HVAC may not run, but our student system is safe. So we did a lot of those in the background. And so I don't want to say too much, but we hope it won't happen, but the things change, but I think we're in pretty good shape and we have very good backup, so.
What's the staff training, phishing emails, right, are just like wild these days. They're getting worse.
I would send it out, so people get update on, oh, this happened, that happened. So you don't have to ask them to sit down there for 30 minutes, but it's just an email, so they, make sure I'm aware of this, I know that. I think that might be better to have them sit down there half an hour to look at the video. They actually just let it run if they never pay attention.
But they get some training.
Yeah, we have a component it's called What Every Employee Needs to Know.
Yeah.
And it's a module that Shani was just describing.
So I work over at King County and I work in IT, and the thing that has been confounding and fun to be involved with is they actually have, I know money doesn't flow, well here, but they have a process where their help desk, I think they have a system, sends fake emails. And they douche people into doing stuff, and it pops up and says, good thing this was a drill. And then they actually show them how to look for like addresses, notice, I assume I don't get enough from outside to know, do you have it labeled, so there's external emails? And so I'm just, well, I don't know if you do that, but if you need to be connected with somebody at King County who does it, and hopefully it's not expensive, it's really helpful in getting people who go, oh yeah, I guess I goofed on that one. I took the training, but this helped me remember better. And we send out messages all the time about how to change your passwords and what secure used to be, what secure is now. So be happy to try to share some resources there. Sure. Yeah.
Part of the reason I asked about training, in addition to just like it's helpful because it's so easy to fall prey to like things. At my old organization, they actually got a discount on insurance, some component of insurance, if everybody participated in digital literacy training. So is there anything like that that exists?
We have our underwriters for insurance do send over a cyber security detail that we do complete, and they ask for what programs, what modules, what features we have in place for that, and you're able to explain that there's a lot that's happening behind the scenes, so that emails and information doesn't even make it to people's inboxes. And so that's built in, and we can talk about that. And then we have just the ongoing training when we do flag things, or when we do identify things, the team will send out information to the staff, letting people know this is something that you need to watch for. This was flagged, or certain people even, because the tech team can also detect what's happening with certain inboxes.
Yeah.
And communicate with them.
Maybe I wonder too, if there's any possibility to do some education on this with our students. Right, because again, like this is something that's I mean, I get a million phishing emails in my email now, text messages also on a daily basis, right? Trying to sell my information, or get me to pay money for something. So I just think, it's probably bigger than the district, but if we think about like, our opportunity to educate, right, and help young people learn digital responsibility, that could be an interesting thing to bring some awareness around.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
Plus, we're moving to Windows 11, which is presumably a more secure environment.
Oh, yeah. After many updates. They're there.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, that last questions only presentation is the capital assets. So that's sensitive asset report. Additional questions here? No? Okay, great, thank you. That brings us to our action items. So we'll start with the approval of the human resources staffing report.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the approval of the highly capable plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Comments? All right, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the approval of the board goals as they stand right now.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then last is the approval of the WASDA legislative position proposal that we looked at earlier.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to our last opportunity for public comment this evening. If you are here in person, would like to offer public comment, the sheet's up here. If you are joining us online and would like to offer some public comment, you can do so by raising your digital hand. and or typing your name into the chat, which should be available momentarily. I'll give you just a second to do that. All right, seeing none, if we could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All right.
No.
Thank you all for being here.
Hey, Amy. Amy. I'm gonna on tomorrow. Can you give this to Melody?
No.
Do you mind giving this to Melody? So can he, I'd like to share that. I can tell him I shouted at him. Oh, really? How cute. She sounds like a kid. About your business or art.